When the ceiling cracks above your head, you have exactly 3 seconds to decide who lives and who dies. Ryan Holt learned that truth on the worst night of his life, sitting across from a woman who couldn't care less about him, in a diner held together by rust and prayer. But when those 3 seconds came, the single father who'd spent years holding his world together didn't hesitate. He saved strangers. He saved a waitress who'd offered him kindness. And in doing so, he walked straight into a war he never saw coming. Stay until the end. Hit that like button. Comment your city below so I can see how far this story travels. The rain came down like accusations. Ryan Holt sat in a booth that smelled of 40 years of grease, burnt coffee, and broken promises. Watching the woman across from him, Jessica, he reminded himself. Her name is Jessica. Scroll through her phone with the kind of focused disinterest usually reserved for terms and conditions agreements. The fluorescent lights above buzzed with a frequency that made his back teeth ache. Outside, the highway stretched into darkness, wet asphalt reflecting the diner's neon sign. Lena's Place, half the letters flickering like a dying heartbeat. "So you do construction?" Jessica said without looking up, her thumb continuing its endless upward swipe. "Yeah." Ryan shifted in the cracked vinyl seat, the duct tape patch on the cushion catching against his jeans. "Mostly residential, some commercial. Whatever keeps the lights on." She made a sound that could have been acknowledgement or the beginning of a yawn. Hard to tell. He shouldn't have come. Ryan knew that the moment he'd pulled into the parking lot and seen her BMW idling there, the engine running like she was already planning her escape route. His truck, a 2003 Ford with rust bloom spreading across the wheel wells like lichen, looked apologetic parked beside it. But Marcus, his foreman, had insisted. "You need to get back out there, man. It's been 2 years since Kelsey left. Your kid needs to see his dad actually living, not just surviving." His kid. Ryan's chest tightened at the thought of Owen, currently at his grandmother's house, probably conning her into letting him stay up past bedtime. 6 years old with his mother's eyes and his father's stubborn determination to fix things that were breaking. "Do you make good money?" Jessica asked, finally looking up. Her makeup was perfect. Dramatic wings of eyeliner, lips the color of wine she'd never offered to share. "I mean, is it stable?" Ryan picked up his coffee mug. The ceramic chipped along the rim, the coffee inside lukewarm and bitter. "It's honest work, pays the bills, keeps my son fed and clothed." "Your son?" She said it like he'd just revealed a prison record. "Right, Marcus mentioned that. How old?" 6. "That's a lot of responsibility." Jessica's nose wrinkled slightly, a tell so unconscious she probably didn't know she was doing it. But Ryan had spent 6 years reading every micro-expression of a small child learning to navigate disappointment, and he caught it immediately. She wasn't interested in a man with responsibilities. She was looking for someone unencumbered, someone whose Friday nights weren't dictated by bedtime routines and permission slips for field trips. "It is," Ryan agreed quietly. He set the mug down, already planning his exit strategy. Finish the coffee, make polite excuses, drive home through the rain and accept that maybe Marcus was wrong. Maybe some men were meant to build things, not rebuild themselves. The waitress appeared at their table like a ghost materializing from the kitchen's steam. Ryan had noticed her when they'd first arrived, late 30s, maybe 40, with the kind of weariness in her eyes that spoke of too many double shifts and not enough sleep. Her name tag read Lena in faded letters. Dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. No jewelry except a small silver watch on her left wrist. Her uniform was clean but worn, the fabric thin from countless washings. "More coffee?" she asked, her voice low and measured, the kind of voice that didn't waste words. "Please." Ryan pushed his mug forward. Jessica didn't look up from her phone. "I'm fine." Lena poured with steady hands, and Ryan noticed the way she moved. Economical, precise, every gesture containing exactly as much energy as necessary, and not a drop more. It was the movement of someone who'd learned to conserve resources because waste wasn't just inefficient, it was dangerous. "Thank you," he said. "You're welcome." She glanced at Jessica, then back at Ryan, and something flickered across her expression. Not judgment exactly, more like recognition. like she'd seen this scene played out 100 times before, in this booth and others like it. The man trying, the woman already gone. Lena moved to the next table, refilling water glasses for a truck driver hunched over a plate of meatloaf, and Ryan found himself watching her. Not in the way he'd tried to watch Jessica, searching for points of connection like a man assembling IKEA furniture without instructions. This was different. This was the way he looked at buildings, assessing structure and integrity, seeing past the surface wear to what held things up. The diner was dying. Anyone with eyes could see it. The ceiling tiles were water-stained, several missing entirely to reveal ductwork and pipes that had seen better decades. The floor tilted slightly toward the kitchen, settling foundation probably. The vinyl on the booth seats was cracked and patched with duct tape in a dozen places. Even the walls seemed tired, the paint yellowed by years of fryer smoke and fluorescent light. But someone still kept it running. Someone still showed up every day, poured coffee, took orders, wiped down tables. Someone still cared. "Are you even listening?" Jessica's voice cut through his observations. Ryan refocused on her. "Sorry, what?" She sighed, the kind of dramatic exhalation that suggested she'd been doing all the heavy lifting in this conversation. "I was saying that I just got promoted. Regional sales manager. It means a lot of travel, a lot of late nights. I need someone who can keep up with that lifestyle, you know? Someone flexible." "Congratulations on the promotion," Ryan said, meaning it. Then, because honesty had always been his default setting, even when kindness might have served him better. "But I'm not flexible. I've got a 6-year-old who needs dinner at 6 and homework help at 7 and bedtime stories at 8:30. I've got a crew that depends on me showing up to job sites at dawn. That's not going to change." Jessica's perfectly shaped eyebrows rose. "Wow, okay. Thanks for wasting my time." "I think we've been wasting each other's time," Ryan said quietly, "and I apologize for my part in that." She was already standing, already reaching for her designer purse, already composing the text she'd send to Marcus about what a disaster his friend was. "You know what your problem is? You've given up. You're just going through the motions, taking care of everyone else, letting yourself disappear." Ryan absorbed the words like he'd absorbed 1,000 other small cuts over the past 2 years. She wasn't entirely wrong, but she wasn't entirely right either. "I hope you find what you're looking for," he said. Jessica laughed, sharp and brittle as breaking glass. "Good luck with your situation." She turned on her expensive heels and walked toward the door, pulling out her phone before she'd even cleared the table. The door swung shut behind her. The BMW's engine roared to life in the parking lot, headlights sweeping across the rain-streaked windows before disappearing into the night. Ryan sat alone in the booth, the coffee cooling in his hands, and felt the familiar weight of loneliness settle back into place like an old injury aching before a storm. The truck driver at the next table caught his eye and raised his coffee mug in a gesture of solidarity. "Been there, brother." Ryan managed a half smile in return. The diner's other occupants returned to their private worlds. An elderly couple in the corner booth, holding hands across the table, not speaking, but not needing to. A woman in medical scrubs scarfing down a burger between shifts. A teenager with textbooks spread across a table, earbuds in, lips moving as she studied. Regular people. Regular lives. The quiet architecture of existence that didn't make it into movies or songs but constituted the actual substance of the world. Ryan's phone buzzed. A text from his mother. "Owen's asleep. Take your time. Hope it's going well." He should leave. He should pay his bill, drive home, relieve his mother from babysitting duty, and crawl into bed where he could pretend that tomorrow wouldn't look exactly like today. But something kept him in the booth. Some gravitational force he couldn't quite name. The waitress, Lena, emerged from the kitchen carrying 2 plates balanced on her forearms with the easy competence of someone who'd been doing this work for years. She delivered them to the medical scrubs woman, checked on the elderly couple, then circled back toward Ryan's booth. "Can I get you anything else?" she asked. "Pie? We've got apple and cherry left." Ryan should have said no, should have asked for the check. Instead, he heard himself say, "What do you recommend?" Lena considered the question with the same serious attention she might give a more important inquiry. "The apple's fresher, made this morning. Cherries from yesterday, but it's still good." "Apple, then, please." She nodded and turned toward the kitchen, but something made Ryan call after her. "Can I ask you something?" Lena paused, one hand on her order pad, expression neutral but attentive. Why do you do this? Ryan gestured around the diner. This place is, forgive me, but it's falling apart. Can't be easy working here. For a long moment, she didn't answer. In the kitchen, something metal clanged against a grill. The rain intensified, drumming harder against the roof. The fluorescent lights continued their endless buzzing hymn. Someone has to, Lena said finally. Her voice was matter-of-fact, but Ryan heard the layers beneath it, pride and exhaustion and something fiercer, something that refused to bend. This place has been here 37 years. It's employed a lot of people, fed a lot of families. Some things are worth keeping alive, even when they're difficult. Ryan understood. He'd built his entire life on that principle. Your date left, Lena observed. Not a question, not judgment, just a fact presented for the record. Yeah. You okay? The question surprised him. When was the last time someone had asked him that and actually waited for an answer? I'm fine, Ryan said automatically. Then with more honesty, it was never going to work. She wanted someone different than who I am. Lena's expression softened fractionally. People usually do. She moved towards the kitchen, but before she could disappear through the swinging doors, she looked back at him. If you want to sit here all night, nursing that coffee, not spending any more money, that's fine by me. Sometimes the best company is the kind that doesn't require conversation. Something in Ryan's chest loosened. Thank you. Or, Lena continued, her tone carefully casual, if you want someone to sit with you for a while, someone who knows what it's like when the night feels longer than it should, I get off in 20 minutes. I could make us both some decent coffee. Not this burnt stuff. The real thing. Ryan stared at her. This woman he didn't know. This stranger who'd seen him at his most pathetic and was offering something that felt simultaneously insignificant and enormous. Before he could respond, before he could untangle his thoughts into words, the ceiling cracked. Not a small crack. Not the settling groan of old wood adjusting to humidity. This was the sound of structural failure, deep and wrong, like bone breaking. Ryan's head snapped up. His contractor's instincts, honed by 15 years of job sites and close calls, kicked in immediately. He saw the ceiling tile directly above their booth bulging downward, water streaming from its edges. He saw the ductwork behind it sagging, pulling away from supports that had probably been corroding for years. He saw the way the adjacent tiles were beginning to buckle, the failure propagating outward in a pattern he recognized from 100 safety seminars and incident reports. He had maybe 3 seconds. Move! Ryan didn't think. He surged out of the booth, grabbed Lena's arm, she was closest, and yanked her backward. His other hand shot out toward the elderly couple in the corner booth. Get out! Everyone move! The medical scrubs woman looked up, confused. The teenager pulled out her earbuds. The truck driver started to turn. Ryan didn't wait for comprehension. He pulled Lena behind him and lunged toward the elderly couple, his construction worker's strength fueled by pure adrenaline. Now! Move now! The old man, bless him, didn't argue. He grabbed his wife's hand and slid out of the booth with the speed of someone who'd survived enough decades to know when to trust a stranger's panic. The ceiling tile gave way. It didn't fall neatly. It collapsed in a cascade of water-soaked plaster, insulation, and ductwork. A section of metal support beam, rusted through at the joints, came down with it, slamming into the booth where Ryan had been sitting 30 seconds earlier. The impact shattered the table, sent coffee mugs and water glasses flying, cracked the vinyl seats. Then the water came. Not a trickle. A deluge. Years of accumulated rainwater from a failing roof pooled in the space between ceiling and roof, finding its sudden exit. It poured down in sheets, carrying debris and insulation and the stink of mold and decay. The teenager screamed. The medical scrubs woman scrambled backward, knocking over her chair. The truck driver was already on his feet, backing toward the door. But Ryan was watching the ceiling, his mind running calculations he didn't want to make. The collapse zone was spreading. The water damage wasn't localized. He could see it now in the sagging patterns across multiple tiles. The ductwork supports were compromised. The whole section was going to come down. Everybody out! Ryan's voice cut through the chaos with the authority of a man who'd commanded construction crews through dangerous situations. Don't run. Move quickly but carefully. Watch for falling debris. Go! Lena was already moving, her shock transforming into action. She grabbed the elderly woman's arm, guiding her toward the door with steady hands. This way, Mrs. Chen. Careful now. That's it. The cook burst through the kitchen doors, a huge man in a grease-stained apron, eyes wide. What the hell? The ceiling's compromised, Ryan barked at him. Is there anyone else in the kitchen? No, I'm alone tonight. Then get out. Now! More tiles were falling now, a domino effect of structural failure. Water streamed down the walls. Somewhere in the building, something groaned, a sound that raised the hair on Ryan's neck. He did a rapid head count as people fled toward the entrance, the elderly couple moving as fast as they could. The medical scrubs woman, phone already out and dialing. The teenager, wide-eyed and shaking but moving. The truck driver. The cook. Is that everyone? Ryan demanded. Lena stood by the door, water dripping from her hair, her uniform soaked. She was counting too, her eyes scanning the diner with the practiced attention of someone who knew every customer, every regular, every face. Yes, everyone's out. Then let's go. Ryan grabbed her elbow again, gentler this time, and pulled her toward the entrance. They stumbled out into the rain just as another section of ceiling collapsed behind them. The sound was deafening, crashing metal and shattering dishes and breaking glass. Through the diner's windows, they could see the interior being destroyed piece by piece, the overhead lights swinging wildly before they shorted out in sprays of sparks. The small crowd gathered in the parking lot, rain plastering their clothes to their bodies, staring at the building that had been serving coffee and conversation 2 minutes ago and was now a disaster zone. Jesus Christ, the truck driver breathed. We almost died. The elderly man had his arm around his wife, both of them trembling. The teenager was crying, her textbooks abandoned inside, probably ruined. The medical scrubs woman was on her phone with 911, her voice shaking as she reported the collapse. Ryan stood in the rain, his heart hammering against his ribs, the adrenaline beginning to ebb and leave him shaky. He'd pulled people out of danger on job sites before, workers who'd gotten too close to unstable trenches, electricians who'd nearly touched live wires. But this was different. This was civilians. This was an elderly couple who'd been holding hands over coffee. This was a kid studying for exams. This was Lena, standing beside him, staring at her diner with an expression that made Ryan's chest hurt. You saved us, the old woman, Mrs. Chen, said, looking up at Ryan with tears streaming down her face. You saved us all. I just recognized the signs, Ryan said quietly. Years of construction work. You learn what failure looks like. Don't minimize it, Lena said, her voice rough. She turned to look at him, rain running down her face, and Ryan saw something in her eyes he couldn't quite name. Gratitude and grief and a fierce burning determination. You saw what no one else saw. You acted when everyone else was frozen. You saved lives. Ryan shook his head. You helped. You got people moving. You kept everyone calm. Because you gave us a chance. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Red and blue lights appeared on the highway, emergency vehicles racing toward them through the rain. The cook was standing apart from the group, phone pressed to his ear, speaking rapidly in Spanish. The teenager had stopped crying and was taking photos of the building, her hands still shaking. The truck driver was helping the Chens sit down on the curb under the minimal shelter of the diner's overhang. Lena walked forward slowly, stopping at the edge of the parking lot, staring at her diner. More of the ceiling was visible now through the windows. Whole sections had collapsed, revealing the skeletal framework above, the failing roof, the infrastructure that had been dying for years. Ryan moved to stand beside her. How long have you owned this place? 12 years, Lena said quietly. My aunt left it to me when she died. She'd run it for 25 years before that. Lena's place. Named after her, not me. She was the original Lena. I was named after her. After the diner. I'm sorry. The roof needed replacing 5 years ago. I got quotes. $30,000. I didn't have $30,000. I had a leaking roof and a prayer and a bucket of contractor-grade sealant. Her voice was flat, factual, reporting the truth without embellishment. I patched it. I reinforced what I could. I kept it running. Ryan understood the mathematics of desperation. When you didn't have resources, you made impossible choices. You triaged. You focused on whatever would buy you one more day, one more week, one more month. It wasn't your fault, he said. Wasn't it? Lena turned to look at him, and her eyes were dry but devastated. I knew it was failing. I knew the ceiling was water damaged. I knew the ductwork was compromised. But I couldn't afford to close, couldn't afford the repairs, so I kept serving coffee and praying nothing would give out. And tonight, it did. People could have died. But they didn't. Because of you, not because of me. The first fire truck pulled into the parking lot, followed by 2 police cars and an ambulance. Firefighters jumped out, already assessing the scene. A paramedic approached the huddled group, asking if anyone was injured. A police officer, young, eager official, made his way toward Ryan and Lena. Are you the owners? I am, Lena said. Lena Moore. This is my diner. Ma'am, I need you to step back from the building. It's not safe. We're going to need to get a statement from you, and from everyone who was inside when the collapse occurred. He looked at Ryan. And you are? Ryan Holt. I was a customer. The customer who pulled everyone out, Lena corrected. The officer's eyebrows rose. We're going to need a statement from you too, sir. More vehicles arrived. A fire inspector, someone from the county building department, roused from dinner or sleep or wherever building inspectors spent their Thursday nights. The paramedics checked everyone over. Miraculously, no injuries beyond cuts and bruises and shock. Ryan gave his statement to a detective who looked tired and skeptical, walking her through the sequence of events with the precision he used for incident reports on job sites. He explained the signs of structural failure, the water damage patterns, the way the ceiling tiles had bulged before collapse. She wrote it all down, occasionally glancing at the ruined diner, then back at Ryan with something that might have been respect. You probably saved 4 or 5 lives tonight, Mr. Holt, she said when he finished. I'm going to include that in my report. I just did what anyone would do. No, she said firmly. You did what someone with training and awareness and courage would do. Most people freeze. You acted. That matters. When she released him, Ryan looked around for Lena. He found her talking to the fire inspector, her arms wrapped around herself against the cold rain, her expression carefully neutral as the inspector gestured at the building and shook his head. Ryan didn't approach. This wasn't his crisis, wasn't his disaster. He was just a man who'd been on a bad date and happened to be in the right place with the right knowledge. But he couldn't make himself leave. He watched the fire inspector hand Lena a business card, watched her nod, water dripping from her ponytail, her uniform clinging to her shoulders, watched her stand there, alone in a parking lot full of first responders and gawkers and the wreckage of something she'd tried to save, and maintain her composure through what had to be shattering her. The rain began to ease, tapering from deluge to steady downpour to persistent drizzle. The elderly couple was taken home by a neighbor who'd arrived to collect them. The teenager's parents showed up in a minivan, hysterical and grateful in equal measure. The truck driver climbed back into his rig and disappeared into the night, probably to find another diner, another meal, another anonymous stop on an endless highway. The cook approached Lena, said something Ryan couldn't hear, and hugged her. She hugged him back, fierce and quick, then let him go. He climbed into an old sedan and drove away, taillights fading into the mist. That's when Ryan saw the other car pulling into the parking lot. It was a sleek black Audi, incongruous against the emergency vehicles in Ryan's beaten pickup. It parked with precision, and a man stepped out, mid-40s, expensive suit protected by a designer umbrella, shoes that probably cost more than Ryan's monthly mortgage. The man surveyed the scene with an expression Ryan recognized instantly. It wasn't concern, it wasn't sympathy, it was satisfaction barely disguised as professional interest. He walked directly toward Lena, his umbrella keeping him dry while she stood soaked and shivering. The fire inspector had moved away, conferring with other officials. Lena was alone. Ms. Moore, the man said, his voice carrying across the parking lot with the confidence of someone accustomed to being heard. What a terrible tragedy. Ryan moved closer, something in his gut warning him. Lena's shoulders straightened. Mr. Rowe, what are you doing here? I heard the emergency dispatch on my scanner. When I realized it was your property, I felt I should come personally to express my condolences. Caleb Rowe's smile didn't reach his eyes. And to reiterate my previous offer, given the circumstances, I'm sure you can see now that selling is your only real option. The building can be repaired, Lena said, her voice tight. Can it? Caleb looked at the diner, his expression pitying. Miss Moore, be realistic. The structure is compromised. The repairs will cost more than the property is worth. Your insurance, assuming you have adequate coverage, which I suspect you don't, will never cover the full cost. And even if you somehow manage to rebuild, who's going to eat at a diner that collapsed and nearly killed people? You need to leave. I'm trying to help you. Caleb's voice took on a paternal tone, the kind of condescension wrapped in concern. My company is prepared to make you a very fair offer. We'll take this problem off your hands, give you enough money to start fresh somewhere else, doing something more suitable. Ryan had heard enough. He stepped forward, positioning himself beside Lena. The lady asked you to leave. Caleb's eyes flicked toward Ryan, dismissive. And you are? Someone who was here when the ceiling came down. Someone who saw exactly what caused the collapse. Ryan met the developer's gaze steadily. Water damage from a failing roof. Long-term structural neglect. The kind of thing that develops over years, not weeks. The kind of thing a proper inspection would have identified and could have been addressed with reasonable intervention. Something flashed across Caleb's face. Surprise, annoyance, recalculation. I'm sorry, are you an engineer? Contractor. 15 years in construction. I know structural failure when I see it. Then you know that building is finished. I know it needs work, Ryan corrected. I also know the difference between failure that happens because of neglect and failure that happens because someone wants it to fail. The air between them changed, tension crackling like electricity before a storm. Caleb's smile hardened. Are you implying something, Mr. Holt? Ryan Holt. And I'm not implying anything. I'm observing that you showed up awfully fast for someone who just happened to hear about this on a scanner. I'm noting that you seem more interested in acquiring this property than in the well-being of the people who were almost killed inside it. I'm wondering what kind of man uses a disaster as a business opportunity. I'm a developer, Caleb said coldly. I see potential where others see problems. This property is in a prime location. Miss Moore is drowning in debt and violations. I'm offering her a life raft. That's not opportunism. That's reality. Lena's hand brushed Ryan's arm, a warning or a request. He wasn't sure which. Mr. Rowe, I appreciate your interest, but I'm not selling. Not tonight. Not ever. This diner is my family's legacy. Your family's legacy is about to be condemned by the county, Caleb said, his professional veneer cracking to reveal the predator beneath. You've got code violations going back 3 years. The building inspector is already preparing the paperwork. Without major repairs, which you can't afford, this property will be seized and auctioned. When that happens, I'll be there to buy it for a fraction of what I'm offering you now. You don't know that, Lena said, but her voice wavered. I do know that, because I've made it my business to know. Caleb closed his umbrella, apparently not caring about the rain anymore, apparently wanting them to see his face clearly. You've been defaulting on your loan payments, Miss Moore. The bank is ready to foreclose. They were ready 6 months ago, but I asked them to give you time. I wanted you to come to this decision willingly, to see reason on your own. Ryan felt Lena stiffen beside him. But clearly, you're not reasonable, Caleb continued. So here's how this is going to work. The building inspector will red tag this property tomorrow. The bank will initiate foreclosure proceedings next week. You'll have 30 days to cure your loan default and complete all code-required repairs. 30 days to find approximately $60,000 you don't have. He stepped closer, and Ryan moved to block him, but Lena put a hand on Ryan's chest, holding her ground herself. When you fail, Caleb said softly, and you will fail, my company will acquire this property through the foreclosure auction. We'll demolish what's left of this eyesore and build something that actually contributes to the community. Condominiums, retail space, things this area needs. This area needs places where regular people can afford to eat, Ryan said. It needs landmarks that have history and heart, not just profit margins. Caleb laughed, but it was an ugly sound. How noble, how wonderfully naive. He looked Ryan up and down, taking in the soaked jeans, the flannel shirt, the boots worn down at the heels. Let me guess. You're going to help her. You're going to ride to the rescue and save the damsel in distress? I'm going to do whatever I can, Ryan said evenly. With what? Your construction worker's salary? Caleb's smile was vicious now. Do you even know how far in debt she is? Do you know about the 3 separate liens on this property? The back taxes? The loan default? This isn't a problem you can fix with a hammer and some good intentions. Ryan held his gaze. Maybe not, but at least I won't sleep well tonight knowing I tried to profit from someone else's disaster. For a moment, Caleb looked like he might say something else, might escalate this confrontation into something physical, but then his professional mask slipped back into place, smooth as ever. Good luck, Miss Moore, he said, turning back to Lena. You're going to need it. My offer stands for 72 hours. After that, you'll be dealing with the bank and the county, and I promise you they're much less sympathetic than I am. He walked back to his Audi, his expensive shoes splashing through puddles without care, and drove away, leaving Ryan and Lena standing in the rain among the emergency vehicles and the ruins of what had been her life's work. Lena was shaking, not from cold, Ryan realized, but from rage and fear and the overwhelming weight of impossible odds. I can't lose this place, she whispered. I can't let him win. Ryan looked at the diner, the broken windows, the collapsed ceiling visible through them, the water still streaming from damaged gutters. He thought about Caleb's words, about $60,000 and 30 days, and all the ways this was an unwinnable fight. Then he thought about Owen, asleep at his grandmother's house, dreaming whatever 6-year-olds dreamed. He thought about the small nest egg he'd been building for the past 2 years, money saved from overtime and side jobs, money meant to provide options, to ensure his son never had to watch his father scramble to make rent. He thought about the woman standing beside him who'd offered to sit with him all night when his date had walked out, who'd kept this diner running for 12 years against impossible odds, who'd named herself after a dream and refused to let it die. How much do you actually owe the bank? Ryan asked. Lena looked at him, confusion and suspicion warring in her expression. Why? Because before we figure out what's possible, we need to know what's real. How much? She hesitated, and he could see her calculating whether to trust this stranger who'd appeared in her life 3 hours ago and had somehow become tangled in her disaster. $42,000 on the loan, she said finally. Another $8,000 in back taxes. The liens total about $6,000. The required repairs. She closed her eyes. The fire inspector says at least $30,000 to bring it up to code, and that's a conservative estimate. $90,000. Maybe more. Ryan did the math against his savings account and felt his stomach drop. He had $18,000, give or take. Not enough. Not close to enough. But sometimes you didn't need enough. Sometimes you just needed a start. The bank foreclosure, Ryan said. You said you have 30 days to cure the default. That's what Caleb said. I haven't gotten official notice yet, but Lena gestured helplessly at the diner. It doesn't matter. I can't make it happen. I've been trying to make it happen for 3 years. But if someone could cure the loan default, pay the back taxes, get the repairs started, would that stop the foreclosure? In theory, yes, but Lena stopped, staring at him. What are you saying? Ryan ran his hand through his wet hair, water streaming down his neck, and made a decision that was either the bravest or stupidest thing he'd done in his life. I'm saying I might know some people, contractors who owe me favors, suppliers who will work on credit. I'm saying I've got some savings, not enough for everything, but enough to start. He met her eyes. I'm saying if you're willing to fight, I'm willing to help you fight. Why? The word came out raw, disbelieving. You don't know me. You don't owe me anything. Why would you risk your money on a building you've been inside for 3 hours? Ryan thought about all the ways he could answer that question, because it was the right thing to do. Because Caleb Rowe's smug face had ignited something in him. Because he'd spent 2 years being safe and careful, and it had gotten him nowhere except sitting across from women who saw him as a burden. But the truth was simpler and more complicated than any of that. Because someone has to, he said, echoing her words from earlier. Because some things are worth saving, even when they're difficult. Lena stared at him for a long moment, rain falling between them, emergency lights painting her face in alternating red and blue. Then slowly she nodded. Okay, she whispered. Okay, but I need you to understand. If we do this, if we really do this, it's not charity. It's a partnership. You put in money and labor, you get equity, real equity. I'm not letting you save me. I'm letting you build something with me. Deal, Ryan said without hesitation. They shook hands there in the parking lot, two strangers bound by rain and disaster and the stubborn refusal to let predators win. And Ryan felt something shift inside his chest. Not hope, exactly. Hope was too fragile for what lay ahead. This was determination. The same determination that had carried him through 2 years of single parenthood, through job sites and injuries and the daily architecture of responsibility. This was the decision to build something that would hold. The fire inspector approached them, his expression professionally sympathetic. Miss Moore, I need to inform you that this building is being red-tagged as of tonight. No one is permitted inside until a structural engineer has assessed the damage and approved repairs. I'm sorry. I understand, Lena said. You'll receive official notice from the county within 48 hours, outlining the specific code violations and required remediation. The clock starts from when you receive that notice. How long do I have? Standard is 30 days to show substantial progress on repairs and 90 days to complete all code-required work. He handed her several business cards. These are structural engineers I'd recommend. Good luck. He walked away, leaving them with the weight of timelines and impossibilities. Ryan looked at his watch. Nearly midnight. He needed to get home, relieve his mother, check on Owen, but he couldn't shake the feeling that walking away now would mean abandoning something he'd started, some silent promise made when he'd pulled Lena from that booth. I should go, he said reluctantly. But tomorrow we start figuring this out. I'll look at the damage in daylight, make some calls, get estimates. We'll put together a plan. You really mean this? Lena said. Not a question, a statement of wonder. I really mean this. She pulled a card from her apron pocket, one of the diner's old business cards, the ink faded but the number still legible. Call me when you're ready. I'll be ready too. Ryan took the card, tucking it carefully into his wallet. Then, because the night had already broken every normal rule and there seemed no point in pretending otherwise, he said, For what it's worth, I would have liked that coffee. The real kind. The kind you make after close. Lena's smile was small but genuine, the first one he'd seen from her all night. Rain check? When the roof is fixed. When the roof is fixed, she agreed. Ryan walked to his truck, climbed inside, and sat there for a moment, watching Lena in his rear-view mirror. She stood alone in the parking lot as the last emergency vehicles pulled away, staring at her ruined diner with her arms crossed and her jaw set. She looked like someone preparing for war. Ryan started the engine and drove home through the thinning rain, his mind already racing through calculations and contacts and the logistics of the impossible. He'd saved 5 people tonight. Now he was going to try to save a building, and maybe, in the process, build something he didn't even know he'd been looking for. Tomorrow, the real work would begin. But tonight he'd stood in the rain and made a promise to a stranger, and for the first time in 2 years, Ryan Holt felt like something other than a man just going through the motions. He felt like a man with a purpose. The rain finally stopped as he pulled into his driveway. Through his mother's kitchen window, he could see her asleep on the couch, TV flickering, waiting for him to come home. Ryan sat in his truck, Lena's business card in his hand, and thought about his son sleeping upstairs, about the college fund he'd been building, about security and responsibility and all the reasons this was a terrible idea. Then he thought about the crack in the ceiling, the 3 seconds of choice, and the way Lena had stood her ground against a man who saw people as obstacles to profit. Some things were worth the risk. Ryan climbed out of his truck and headed inside, already planning tomorrow's first call. The sun rose over Lena's place like a coroner arriving to examine a body. Ryan pulled into the parking lot at 6:30, his truck loaded with tools and a thermos of coffee strong enough to strip paint. He'd been awake since 4, lying in bed running calculations until the numbers blurred into incomprehensible strings. Owen had woken once, padding into Ryan's room with his stuffed elephant, asking why Daddy looked worried. Ryan had pulled his son close and lied smoothly. Just thinking about work, buddy. Nothing to worry about. before carrying him back to bed. The diner looked worse in daylight. What had been obscured by darkness and rain now stood exposed. The sagging roofline, the water stains spreading down the exterior walls like bruises, the broken windows revealing the devastation inside. Yellow caution tape surrounded the building, fluttering in the morning breeze. The red tag notice was already posted on the front door, official and final. Ryan sat in his truck, engine idling, staring at what he'd promised to save. A sensible man would drive away. A sensible man would call Lena, apologize, explain that he'd gotten caught up in the moment, but couldn't actually risk his son's future on a condemned building and a woman he'd known for 3 hours. Ryan turned off the engine and climbed out. He was halfway to the building when another vehicle pulled in, a Honda Civic with a dented bumper and a coffee cup graveyard in the back seat. Lena emerged wearing jeans and a faded sweatshirt, her hair in the same practical ponytail, dark circles under her eyes that suggested she'd slept as little as Ryan had. "You came," she said, and Ryan heard the surprise beneath the simple statement. "Said I would." "People say a lot of things." Lena walked toward him, stopping a few feet away, maintaining the careful distance of two people who'd made promises they weren't sure they could keep. "I stayed up all night waiting for you to text and tell me you'd changed your mind." "Did you want me to change my mind?" "Part of me did," she admitted. "The part that doesn't want to drag anyone else down with me when the ship sinks." "And the other part?" Lena looked at the diner, her expression unreadable. "The other part started making lists at 2 in the morning, contractors to call, permits to file. Ways to make the impossible slightly less impossible." Ryan pulled a folded piece of paper from his jacket pocket. "Me too." They stood there, two practical people holding their lists of impossible tasks, and something passed between them, not quite trust, but the foundation that trust might eventually build on. Recognition. The acknowledgement that they were both stubborn enough to try. "Show me the damage," Ryan said. They ducked under the caution tape, approaching the building with the wariness of people entering a crime scene. The front door was unlocked. Anyone could have walked in during the night, though Ryan doubted anyone had. There was nothing left to steal except broken dreams and water-damaged memories. Inside, the destruction was comprehensive. The collapsed ceiling had created a cascade effect, pulling down adjacent sections, exposing ductwork and electrical wiring and insulation that hung in wet clumps like diseased tissue. Water covered everything. The floor, the booths, pooled in corners and slowly draining through cracks in the foundation. The smell was overwhelming, mold and rot and the particular sourness of a building dying from the inside out. Ryan pulled a flashlight from his tool belt and played it across the ceiling, tracking the pattern of failure. Lena walked beside him, silent, her breathing steady despite what had to be devastating to witness in full daylight. "Tell me what you see," she said quietly. "The roof failure is concentrated in the northwest corner," Ryan said, falling into the professional assessment that came easier than emotional reaction. "See how the water stains are darkest there? That's where the leak started, probably years ago. The water damaged the roof decking, which sagged and created a depression. That depression collected more water. More water created more damage. Classic failure cycle. Can it be fixed? The roof can be replaced. That's straightforward. But the ceiling joists are compromised. We'll need to sister new boards alongside the damaged ones to restore structural integrity. The ductwork has to be replaced entirely. The electrical system needs a complete inspection and probably rewiring in this whole section. The insulation is destroyed, and that's just what I can see without getting into the walls." Lena absorbed this without visible reaction. "How much?" "For materials? Maybe $15,000 if I can get contractor pricing. Labor's where it gets expensive. We'd be looking at 2 weeks minimum with a full crew, probably longer. At standard rates..." Ryan did the mental math and felt his stomach tighten. 40,000, maybe 45. "You said you had 18,000 in savings." "I do." "So we're still short at least 27,000, and that's before we address the loan default and back taxes." Lena's voice remained level, factual, reporting the mathematics of defeat. "Caleb was right. It's impossible." "Caleb's an asshole," Ryan said flatly. "And impossible just means we haven't figured out the solution yet." "You sound like my aunt." Lena moved to what had been the counter, running her hand along the scarred formica. She used to say that about everything: broken dishwasher, health department violations, the day the health inspector found mice in the storage room. Impossible just means we're not trying hard enough, Lena. Her voice softened. She died trying hard enough. Heart attack at 59, working a double shift because the other waitress called in sick. Ryan heard the warning beneath the story. Don't kill yourself for this. Don't sacrifice everything for a building. But he also heard the love, the respect, the desire to honor something that had mattered. I've got some ideas, Ryan said. Not solutions yet, just possibilities. I'm listening. My crew, the guys I work with, most of them do side jobs for cash. If I can get them to work weekends at a reduced rate, that cuts labor costs significantly. I know a supplier in Millbrook who owes me a favor from a job I helped him finish when his contractor walked. He might extend credit on materials. And the bank foreclosure, there's usually a cure period built into those. If we can show good faith effort, prove we're making progress, they might extend the deadline. Lena turned to face him. That's a lot of ifs and maybes. That's all I've got right now. It's more than I had yesterday. She pulled out her phone, scrolling through something, then held it out to show Ryan. County website. The building inspector uploaded the violation list at 5 this morning. 47 separate code violations, ranging from minor to critical. We have to clear all of them to get the red tag lifted. Ryan took the phone, scrolling through the list. Structural deficiencies, electrical code violations, plumbing issues, fire suppression system failures, each one requiring permits, inspections, certified contractors. This is a bureaucratic nightmare, he muttered. I've been dealing with bureaucratic nightmares for 12 years. I can handle the permits and inspections. Lena reclaimed her phone. What I can't handle is the actual work. That's where I need you. You'll have me. Ryan met her eyes. But I need you to understand something. This isn't going to be clean or easy. We're going to hit problems we didn't anticipate. We're going to run out of money before we run out of violations. There will be days when quitting seems like the only rational choice. I know. And I need you to understand something else. Ryan hesitated, choosing his words carefully. I've got a 6-year-old son. He's my priority. Always. If this project starts affecting my ability to take care of him, I'm out. I'll help you find other contractors. I'll do what I can, but Owen comes first. I wouldn't respect you if he didn't, Lena said simply. I'm not asking you to choose between your kid and this building. I'm asking you to help me fight long enough to see if we can win. Ryan nodded slowly. Okay, then let's get to work. They spent the next 2 hours documenting everything, Ryan taking photos and measurements while Lena made detailed notes on her phone. They cataloged every broken tile, every damaged board, every violation that needed addressing. It was grim, methodical work, the kind that made the scope of the problem feel simultaneously more manageable and more overwhelming. At 8:30, Ryan's phone buzzed. Marcus. Where are you? Job site's been waiting for 20 minutes. Ryan had forgotten. Friday morning. They had a deck renovation in Riverside, a job they'd started 3 weeks ago. He was supposed to be there supervising the crew. I had an emergency. I'll be there in 30 minutes. What kind of emergency? Marcus's suspicion came through clearly. The kind I'll explain later. Start without me. I'll be there soon. He hung up before Marcus could argue and looked at Lena apologetically. I have to go. I've got a crew waiting. Of course, I have to open anyway. She paused. Open? That's funny. I can't actually open. The bank thing, when do you get official notice? According to their website, foreclosure notices go out certified mail within 3 business days of default declaration, so probably Monday or Tuesday, which gives us the weekend to make a plan. Ryan pulled out his wallet and extracted Lena's business card from the night before, slightly damp but still legible. I'll make some calls this afternoon, see what's actually possible versus what's wishful thinking. Can we meet tomorrow? Saturday morning? Here? Coffee shop might be better, somewhere we can spread out paperwork without breathing mold spores. Lena almost smiled. There's a place called Rosie's on Main Street, opens at 7. I'll be there at 7:30, gives me time to drop Owen at my mother's. Ryan headed for his truck, but Lena called after him. Ryan? Thank you for showing up, for not being sensible. Day's still young, he said. I might come to my senses yet. But driving toward the Riverside job site, Ryan knew he wouldn't. Something had shifted in him last night, some weight he'd been carrying without realizing it. The weight of going through motions, of building other people's dreams while his own life remained carefully small and safe and utterly predictable. This was reckless. This was dangerous. This might destroy the financial security he'd worked 2 years to build. But it felt alive. Marcus was waiting when Ryan arrived, arms crossed, expression somewhere between annoyed and concerned. The rest of the crew, Tommy, Jorge, and young Derek, were already working, the sound of power saws cutting through morning air. "You want to tell me what's going on?" Marcus asked. Ryan grabbed his tool belt from the truck bed. "Remember that date you set me up on? The one with Jessica? Please tell me you didn't do something stupid." "Define stupid," Marcus groaned. "What did you do?" So Ryan told him about the collapse, about Lena, about Caleb Rowe and the foreclosure and the impossible timeline. Marcus listened without interrupting, his expression cycling through disbelief, concern, and finally resignation. "You're actually serious about this," Marcus said when Ryan finished. "I am." "You know this is insane, right? You barely know this woman. You're talking about risking your savings, your weekends, your—" Marcus stopped. "Does Owen know?" "Not yet." "Ryan, man, I love you like a brother, but have you thought this through? Actually thought it through? You've spent 2 years being careful with money, being responsible, making sure Owen never has to worry about stability. And now you're going to blow it all on a condemned diner? I'm not blowing it all. I'm investing it." "In what? A building that's literally falling apart?" Ryan set down his tool belt and looked at his friend. "You remember why I got into this business? Because your dad was a contractor. Because my dad built things that lasted, houses that families grew up in, decks where people had birthday parties and barbecues, things that mattered to regular people trying to live regular lives." Ryan gestured around the job site. A beautiful house in a beautiful neighborhood. The kind of place where people had vacation homes and investment portfolios. "We do good work here. But who are we building for? People who already have everything they need. People who pay well," Marcus pointed out. "True. And I'm grateful for the work. But that diner, that place mattered. It was where truck drivers stopped between long hauls, where high school kids studied after school because their homes were too chaotic, where an elderly couple held hands over coffee every Thursday night." Ryan's voice roughened. "Caleb Rowe wants to tear it down and build condos nobody from this town can afford. I can't stop him from building his condos everywhere else. But maybe I can stop him from taking this one place." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he sighed, the sound of a man recognizing a lost cause. "You need help with the work?" Ryan's chest tightened. "I can't pay you full rate. I can barely afford to pay myself." "Did I say anything about full rate?" Marcus pulled out his phone, scrolling through his calendar. "I've got Saturdays free for the next month. I'll give you 8 hours a week at half my usual, and I'll talk to Tommy and Jorge. They might be willing to do the same." "Marcus, don't make it weird. Just say thank you, and buy me a beer when this is over." "Thank you," Ryan said quietly. "And when this is over, I'll buy you a whole case." They worked through the day, installing deck boards and railings, the physical labor a welcome distraction from the mental chaos of what Ryan had committed to. But his mind kept drifting back to Lena's diner, running calculations, sketching out work sequences, trying to find a path through the impossible. At 3 o'clock, he called his supplier contact in Millbrook. Eddie Thornton answered on the 4th ring, his voice rough from decades of cigarettes and construction dust. "Ryan Holt, haven't heard from you in months. You finally ready to admit you need my help?" "I need your help," Ryan said without preamble. "Must be serious if you're not even pretending to negotiate first." Ryan explained the situation, the diner, the timeline, the financial constraints. Eddie listened, occasionally grunting acknowledgement, his silence more thoughtful than dismissive. "So you want me to extend you credit on materials for a building that might get condemned anyway, for a woman you just met, on a project that has maybe a 20% chance of success," Eddie summarized. "When you put it like that, it sounds insane." "Because it is insane." Eddie paused, and Ryan heard him lighting a cigarette, the familiar click of a Zippo. But I've known you 15 years, Ryan. You're the most careful, responsible, boring contractor I've ever worked with. If you're willing to bet on this, maybe there's something there I'm not seeing. Does that mean? It means I'll extend you $10,000 in credit at cost plus 10%. Materials only. You default. I own whatever you've built. Deal? Deal. Ryan felt something in his chest loosen. $10,000 in materials. Combined with his $18,000 in savings, that gave him $28,000 to work with. Still short, but closer. You're going to owe me the story when this is done, Eddie said. Win or lose, I want to know how it ends. You'll be the first person I tell. Ryan made 3 more calls that afternoon. A plumber who agreed to work weekends at reduced rates, an electrician who owed Ryan a favor, and a structural engineer willing to do the inspection for half her usual fee if Ryan's crew did the actual reinforcement work. Each conversation was a negotiation, a careful balance of asking for help without begging, of being honest about risks without underselling the opportunity. By the time Ryan left the job site at 5:30, he had the skeleton of a plan. Not a good plan, not a safe plan, but a plan that might, with luck and work and stubbornness, actually work. He picked up Owen from his mother's house, enduring her questions about why he looked so tired, deflecting with half-truths about a big project and challenging work. Owen chattered about his day, something about dinosaurs and a playground incident and his friend Michael's new shoes, and Ryan listened with half his attention while the other half remained fixed on lumber calculations and permit timelines. That night, after Owen was asleep, Ryan sat at his kitchen table with a spreadsheet and a calculator, running numbers until they blurred. No matter how he arranged things, he was still at least $15,000 short. The loan payoff, the back taxes, the materials, the labor. Even with everyone working at reduced rates, even with Eddie's credit extension, the math didn't work. He needed more money, or more time, or a miracle. Ryan was still at the table at midnight when his phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Lena. Got your number from the police report. Can't sleep. Keep thinking about everything that needs to happen and how impossible it is. Tell me this is actually possible. Ryan stared at the message, at this woman he barely knew, asking him for reassurance he couldn't honestly give. He typed, "It's possible, improbable, but possible. See you tomorrow at Rosie's." Her response came immediately. "Thank you for lying. It helps." Ryan smiled despite everything and set down his phone. Then he went back to his spreadsheet, searching for solutions in columns of numbers that refused to cooperate. Saturday morning arrived cold and bright. Ryan dropped Owen at his mother's house. "Just a few hours, I've got a meeting," and drove to Main Street. Rosie's Coffee was a local institution, the kind of place that served coffee in actual ceramic mugs and made their pastries from scratch. It was crowded with the weekend breakfast crowd, but Ryan spotted Lena in a corner booth, already surrounded by papers. She looked up when he approached, and Ryan saw that she'd been crying. Not recently, her eyes were clear, but the evidence was there in the redness and the tightness around her mouth. "Rough night?" he asked, sliding into the booth across from her. "Got the official foreclosure notice. Hand-delivered at 7 this morning by a process server who apologized while destroying my life." Lena pushed a stack of legal documents across the table. 30 days to cure the default, $42,000 due immediately. All violations must be cleared before the bank will consider the loan current. Ryan scanned the documents, his contractor's eye picking out the relevant details. The cure period started today. 30 days. The clock was already ticking. "Okay," he said. "Let's figure out what we can actually do in 30 days. They worked through the morning, ordering coffee and barely touching it, building a timeline that felt like constructing a house of cards in a windstorm. Week 1, emergency roof repairs to stop further water damage. Week 2, structural reinforcement and electrical work. Week 3, finish interior repairs, address remaining code violations. Week 4, final inspections and hope everything passed." "This assumes nothing goes wrong," Lena said, staring at their timeline. "Things will go wrong," Ryan corrected. "We just have to hope they're small things we can fix quickly." A shadow fell across their table. Ryan looked up to find Caleb Rose standing there, immaculate in weekend casual wear that probably cost more than Ryan's truck payment, holding a coffee cup that advertised his virtue. some fair trade organic blend. Ms. Moore, Mr. Holt. Caleb's smile was professionally pleasant. Working on the weekend. How industrious. Mr. Rowe, Lena's voice was ice. You're not welcome at this table. It's a public coffee shop. I'm a paying customer. Caleb gestured at their spread of papers. I couldn't help but notice you're making plans. That's adorable, really. But you should know that I had a conversation with the county building inspector yesterday. The list of violations has been updated. Turns out there are some additional issues that came to light during the initial inspection. Ryan felt cold certainty settle in his gut. What kind of issues? Asbestos in the ceiling tiles, lead paint on the interior walls. Both require certified abatement contractors. Both significantly increase remediation costs. Caleb's expression remained pleasant, but his eyes were hard. Terrible luck, really. But these things happen in older buildings. You son of a... Ryan started to rise, but Lena's hand shot out, gripping his wrist. He wants you to make a scene, she said quietly. Don't give him the satisfaction. Caleb's smile widened. Smart woman. You should listen to her, Mr. Holt. Violence solves nothing. Money, on the other hand, solves everything, and you simply don't have enough of it. How do you know what we have? Ryan demanded. Because I make it my business to know. I know exactly how much you have in savings, Mr. Holt. $18,347 as of yesterday. I know you've extended credit with Eddie Thornton. $10,000 at cost plus 10. I know you're planning to use your construction crew on weekends at reduced rates. Caleb leaned closer. I know everything. And I know it's not enough. Get away from our table, Lena said. I'm trying to help you understand reality. The asbestos abatement alone will cost $15,000. Lead paint remediation, another $8,000. You're looking at least $23,000 in additional costs, and that's before you've even started the actual repairs. Caleb straightened. My offer expires Monday morning. After that, you're on your own against the bank and the county in reality. He walked away, leaving them in silence heavy with the weight of impossible math. Ryan looked at Lena and saw his own desperation reflected in her eyes. Asbestos and lead paint, she whispered. We're done. We can't afford that. There are programs, Ryan said, his mind racing. County grants for hazardous material abatement, environmental protection loans. We just need to... Ryan, Lena's voice was gentle but final. Stop, please. I appreciate everything you've tried to do, everything you were willing to risk. But Caleb's right. We don't have enough money. We don't have enough time. And I can't let you destroy your financial security for a fight we can't win. We haven't lost yet. We lost the moment the ceiling collapsed. I was just too stubborn to admit it. Lena started gathering her papers, her movements mechanical. I'll accept Caleb's offer, take what I can get. Start over somewhere else. You don't mean that. I do. She met his eyes, and Ryan saw the fight draining out of her in real time. Thank you, Ryan. Truly. For showing up. For believing it was possible. But I'm not going to let you sacrifice your son's future for my past. She stood, papers clutched to her chest, and walked toward the door. Ryan sat frozen in the booth, watching her leave, feeling the familiar weight of failure settling over him. This was what happened when you reached beyond what was safe. This was what happened when you tried to build something that mattered instead of just getting by. You failed, and people got hurt. But as Lena pushed through the door and disappeared onto Main Street, something in Ryan refused to accept it. Something stubborn and probably stupid, the same thing that had made him pull people from a collapsing building, the same thing that had made him offer his savings to a stranger. He pulled out his phone and dialed Eddie Thornton. Eddie? That credit you extended me? I need to increase it to $20,000, and I need the name of every environmental abatement contractor you know who might work on payment plans. Ryan, what are you doing? Probably destroying my life. Can you help or not? Eddie was quiet for a beat, then, I'll make some calls, and Ryan, you better win this thing, because if you don't, I'm going to feel really stupid for believing in you. That makes two of us, Ryan said, and hung up. He had 30 days to save a building, stop a foreclosure, and prove that sometimes the impossible was just difficult in disguise. The clock was ticking, and Ryan Holt was done being sensible. Ryan found Lena in the diner parking lot, sitting in her Honda with the engine off, staring at the red-tagged building through rain-streaked windows. The sky had turned gray again, threatening another downpour, as if the weather itself was conspiring with Caleb Rowe. He knocked on her window. She didn't move, didn't acknowledge him, just kept staring straight ahead like a woman watching her life burn down and unable to look away. Ryan knocked again, harder this time. Slowly, Lena rolled down the window. Her face was dry but devastated, the expression of someone who'd cried all the tears they had and now faced the empty aftermath. "I thought we were done," she said quietly. "We're not done until you sign Caleb's papers. Have you signed them?" "No, but—" "Then we're not done." Ryan crouched beside her car, bringing himself to eye level. "I called Eddie back. He's increasing my credit line and connecting me with environmental contractors. I'm calling in every favor I've ever earned. We can make this work." "Ryan, the math doesn't work. Even if we get the abatement done, even if we clear all the violations, I still can't make the loan payment, $42,000. I don't have it. You don't have it. And the bank doesn't care about good intentions." "The loan documents," Ryan said. "Can I see them again?" Lena hesitated, then reached into her bag and pulled out the foreclosure notice. Ryan had read it quickly at the coffee shop, focused on the timeline and the total amount due. Now he read it with the careful attention he gave to building codes and contract specifications, looking for the details that made the difference between failure and possibility. Cure clause. 30 days. All amounts due must be paid in full to reinstate the loan. But there was another paragraph buried in the legal language, a paragraph about good faith effort and substantial compliance. "Look at this," Ryan said, pointing. "The bank is required to consider partial payment if accompanied by evidence of substantial progress on code violations. It's not automatic loan reinstatement, but it gives us leverage for negotiation." "Negotiation with a bank that wants to foreclose so Caleb can buy the property at auction?" Lena's voice was bitter. "You think they're going to negotiate in good faith?" "I think they're required to follow their own loan documents. And I think if we show up with proof that we're fixing the building, with partial payment, with a plan for the rest, they have to at least review it." Ryan stood, his knees protesting the crouch position. "It's not a guarantee, but it's a chance." Lena looked at him for a long moment, something shifting in her expression. Not hope exactly. Something more complicated. The way someone looks at a life raft when they know it might not hold but drowning is the only alternative. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. "And don't tell me it's because someone has to. There has to be more than that. Nobody risks everything for a stranger based on principle." Ryan thought about Owen, about the questions his son would ask when he was older. He thought about his own father, a man who'd built houses for working families until a heart attack took him at 53. He thought about the way Lena had offered to sit with him all night, a kindness extended without expectation of return. "My dad used to say that you judge a man by what he builds and what he refuses to let fall," Ryan said slowly. He meant it literally. He was talking about construction, about doing work that lasted. But I think he meant it other ways too, about the kind of life you build, about what you're willing to fight for. He paused, choosing his words carefully. "I've spent 2 years building a small, safe life, making sure Owen had stability, making sure nothing could collapse on us. And that was necessary. It was what we needed. But somewhere in all that safety, I stopped building anything that mattered beyond just survival." Ryan met her eyes. "Last night, when I pulled you out of that booth, when I saw that ceiling coming down, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, like I was doing something that actually mattered, something bigger than just getting through the day." "That's not a reason to risk your son's college fund," Lena said softly. "No, it's not. But teaching him that some things are worth fighting for, that you don't just walk away when it gets hard, that you help people even when it costs you something, that's worth more than any college fund." Lena's eyes filled with tears she didn't let fall. "You're either the best man I've ever met, or the biggest fool." "Probably both." Ryan straightened. "So are you going to sit in this car feeling sorry for yourself, or are you going to help me figure out how to beat Caleb Rowe?" A ghost of a smile touched Lena's lips. "You know he's going to fight dirty. Then we fight smarter." Lena wiped her eyes, took a deep breath, and climbed out of her car. Okay, tell me your plan. They spent the rest of Saturday afternoon in the diner, masks on against the mold, flashlights cutting through the gloom, documenting every inch of damage for the environmental assessment. Ryan took hundreds of photos while Lena made notes, their voices echoing in the ruined space. At 4 o'clock, Eddie called back. "I've got a guy," he said without preamble. "Dominic Russo does environmental abatement all over the county. He's expensive, but he's fast, and he's certified for everything you need. I told him your situation. He says he can have an assessment done by Monday and start work by Wednesday if you can get the permits expedited." "What's he charging?" $22,000 for asbestos and lead paint abatement. Full clearance, all certifications, guaranteed to pass inspection. Ryan's stomach dropped. $22,000. Combined with everything else, they were looking at total costs of over $70,000. He had access to maybe $35,000 between his savings and Eddie's extended credit. They were still $35,000 short. "Tell him yes," Ryan said, "and ask if he'll take half up front and the rest on completion." "Ryan, just ask." Eddie sighed. "I'll ask, but you're building a house of cards here, buddy. One strong wind and this whole thing collapses." "Story of my life," Ryan muttered and hung up. Lena was watching him from across the diner. "How bad?" "We need another $35,000. Minimum. We don't have another $35,000. "I know." Ryan ran his hand through his hair, his mind racing through possibilities. Personal loan? His credit was good, but not good enough for that amount. Second mortgage on his house. That would take weeks to process. Crowdfunding? Maybe, but not in the timeline they had. His phone buzzed. A text from his mother. "Owen wants to know if you're coming to dinner. I'm making pot roast." Owen, who needed new shoes for school and who Ryan had promised could join the soccer league next season. Owen, whose college fund Ryan was about to drain for a building that might get demolished anyway. "I need to go," Ryan said, pocketing his phone. "It's Saturday. I've got dinner with my son." "Of course." Lena started gathering her things. "Ryan, I want you to know if this doesn't work, if we can't find the money, I won't hold it against you. You've already done more than anyone had a right to expect." "We'll find it," Ryan said with more confidence than he felt. "I just need to figure out how." Dinner at his mother's house was both comfort and torture. Owen chattered happily about his day at Grandma's, about the cartoon they'd watched, about the science project he wanted to do for school, about volcanoes. Ryan's mother served pot roast and mashed potatoes and asked gentle questions about the big project Ryan had mentioned. "It's complicated," Ryan said, cutting his meat into precise pieces. "A renovation job, tight timeline, a lot of moving parts." "You look exhausted," his mother observed. "When's the last time you slept a full night?" "Couldn't tell you." After dinner, while Owen played in the living room with toy trucks, Ryan helped his mother with dishes. She washed, he dried, falling into the comfortable rhythm they'd established over the past 2 years of regular Saturday dinners. "You want to tell me what's really going on?" she asked, handing him a dripping plate. "What makes you think something's going on?" "You're my son, Ryan. I've watched you carry the weight of the world since Kelsey left. But this is different. This isn't just responsibility weighing on you. This is something else." Ryan dried the plate slowly, considering how much to tell her. His mother had helped him through the darkest period of his life, had taken care of Owen while Ryan figured out how to be a single father, had never once made him feel like a burden. She deserved honesty. "I'm trying to help someone save their business," he said finally. "A diner. It's in foreclosure. If I don't help, it gets sold at auction to a developer who'll tear it down." "And this is important to you, why?" "Because it matters. Because it's a place that serves people who don't have a lot of options. Because the owner is fighting to keep it alive and she shouldn't have to fight alone." His mother was quiet for a moment, washing another dish with methodical attention. "This owner, is she someone special?" "I barely know her, Mom." "That's not what I asked." Ryan thought about Lena standing in the rain, refusing to give up even when everything was falling apart, about the way she'd offered him kindness when his date had walked out, about the steel in her voice when she'd faced down Caleb Rowe. "I don't know yet," he admitted. "Maybe, but that's not why I'm doing this." "Isn't it?" "No, I'm doing it because it's the right thing to do. Because someone has to, because Ryan stopped, the words catching in his throat. Because your father would have, his mother finished gently. Ryan nodded, not trusting his voice. His mother set down the dish she was washing and turned to face him, her hands dripping soapy water. Your father was a good man, the best man I ever knew. But he also had a habit of taking on everyone else's problems like they were his own. It's what made him wonderful, and it's what killed him. Working himself to death trying to help everyone who needed it. I'm not Dad. No, you're not. You're more careful, more measured. But you have his heart, and I worry that you'll make the same mistakes he did, putting everyone else first until there's nothing left of you. I'm putting Owen first, Ryan said firmly. Always. Are you? Or are you putting your idea of what Owen needs first? His mother picked up a towel and dried her hands. Your son needs shoes and soccer fees and a college fund, yes, but he also needs a father who's present and engaged and fighting for things that matter. He needs to see you living, not just surviving. Ryan absorbed this, the words settling somewhere deep. You think I should do this? I think you're already doing it. The question is whether you're doing it wholeheartedly or with one foot out the door, ready to run when it gets too hard. She touched his arm. Whatever you decide, I'm here. I'll watch Owen whenever you need. I'll help however I can. But you need to decide if you're all in or all out. Half measures won't save a building or your conscience. That night, after putting Owen to bed with his usual bedtime story and glass of water, Ryan sat at his kitchen table with his laptop open to his bank account. $18,347. 2 years of careful saving, 2 years of overtime and side jobs and saying no to anything that wasn't essential. He thought about his mother's words, about his father's legacy, about what he was actually teaching Owen by playing it safe. Then he thought about Monday morning, when Caleb's offer would expire and the clock would start running on the foreclosure. Ryan opened a new browser tab and navigated to his bank's loan application page. Personal loan. Maximum amount. He filled out the form with steady hands, listing his income, his credit score, his employment history. The approval would take 48 hours minimum, maybe longer. But if it came through, if he could get even $20,000, combined with everything else, they might actually have enough. He submitted the application at 11:30 Saturday night and went to bed without sleeping, running calculations in his head until dawn. Sunday morning, Ryan took Owen to the park. They threw a baseball back and forth, Owen's throws wild and enthusiastic, Ryan's measured and precise. The air was crisp and clean, last night's rain having washed away the humidity, leaving everything sharp-edged and clear. Dad, why do you look sad? Owen asked, catching the ball against his chest. I'm not sad, buddy, just thinking. About what? About work. About a building I'm trying to fix. Owen threw the ball back, a better throw this time, almost reaching Ryan without bouncing. Is it hard to fix? Very hard. But you can fix it, right? You fix everything. Ryan caught the ball, the weight of his son's faith settling over him like a physical thing. To Owen, his father was capable of anything, could fix any problem, solve any puzzle, make anything right. Someday Owen would learn the truth, that his father was just a man who did his best and failed more often than he succeeded. But not yet. Not today. I'm going to try, Ryan said. That's all we can do, right? Try our best? And then we get ice cream, Owen added seriously. That's what you always say. Try your best, and then ice cream. Ryan laughed, despite everything. You're absolutely right. Come on, let's get ice cream. They spent the afternoon together, father and son, doing all the normal Sunday things. Ice cream, grocery shopping, watching a movie on the couch. Ryan tried to be present, tried to focus on Owen's happiness instead of the impossible math waiting for him tomorrow. But his mind kept drifting back to the diner, to Lena, to the fight ahead. At 6 o'clock, his phone rang. Unknown number. Mr. Holt? This is Dominic Russo. Eddie Thornton gave me your information. I understand you need environmental abatement work done with an extremely tight timeline. That's right. Ryan stepped into the kitchen, away from the TV where Owen was absorbed in animated adventures. Can you do it? I can do it. But I need to be clear about costs and timeline. Asbestos and lead paint abatement in a commercial property of that size. We're looking at a minimum 7-day job, possibly 10 depending on what we find. Cost is $22,000, and that's with me cutting every corner I legally can. I'll need half up front before I start work. $11,000 up front. Ryan's savings could cover it, but that would leave him with almost nothing for the actual construction work. Eddie mentioned you might be willing to work with me on payment terms, Ryan said. Dominic was quiet for a beat. Eddie tells me you're trying to stop a foreclosure, that you're up against Caleb Rowe. That's right. I've dealt with Rowe before. He tried to strong-arm me into inflating an inspection report on a property he wanted condemned. When I refused, he blackballed me from half the commercial work in the county. Dominic's voice hardened. So here's the deal. I'll do your abatement work for $20,000 instead of $22,000. I'll take $8,000 up front and the rest on completion. And if Rowe gives you any trouble about my certifications, I'll bury him in documentation until he chokes on it. Relief flooded through Ryan so intensely he had to sit down. Thank you. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. We've still got to actually do the work and pass inspection. I'll be at the property tomorrow morning at 8 for initial assessment. Have your building owner there with all relevant permits and documentation. She'll be there. We'll both be there. Ryan hung up and immediately called Lena. I've got good news and complicated news, he said when she answered. The abatement contractor is willing to work with us on payment. He's cutting his fee and taking partial payment up front. That's the good news. What's the complicated news? We still need about $28,000 to cover everything. Abatement, construction materials, permits, the loan payment. I applied for a personal loan last night. If it comes through, we'll have enough. If it doesn't, Ryan trailed off. If it doesn't, we're done, Lena finished. When will you know? Bank says 48 hours, so Tuesday at the earliest. The cure period deadline is 30 days from yesterday. We don't have time to wait for maybes. I know. Ryan rubbed his eyes, exhaustion settling into his bones. But it's the best shot we've got. Monday morning arrived with the weight of consequence. Ryan dropped Owen at school, watching his son run toward the playground with his backpack bouncing, carefree and secure in the knowledge that his father had everything under control. The guilt was immediate and sharp. What was he doing? Risking everything on a building that wasn't his, on a woman he barely knew, on a fight that rational people would have walked away from days ago. But Ryan drove to the diner anyway, arriving at 7:45 to find Lena already there, along with Dominic Russo, a compact man in his 50s with the weathered face of someone who'd spent decades dealing with hazardous materials and bureaucratic nightmares. You must be Ryan Holt, Dominic said, extending a hand. Eddie speaks highly of you, says you're one of the good ones. Eddie's generous. Eddie's cynical as hell. If he's vouching for you, you must have earned it. Dominic turned to the diner, pulling out a tablet and beginning his assessment. Let's see what we're dealing with. They spent 2 hours going through the building, Dominic taking samples, making notes, occasionally grunting disapproval at what he found. Lena followed silently, her expression carefully neutral, but Ryan saw the way her hands clenched whenever Dominic pointed out another problem. Finally, Dominic stepped back, reviewing his notes. Okay, here's the situation. You've got asbestos in approximately 40% of the ceiling tiles. Lead paint on most interior walls, probably from 3 or 4 different decades of repainting. The good news is it's all containable. The bad news is it's going to take 8 full days of work, and that's with my crew working 10-hour shifts. 8 days we can work with, Ryan said. What about the permits? I can expedite through the county if you've got all your other documentation in order. But you need to understand, the moment I file for abatement permits, this becomes an official environmental hazard. The county will red tag the property even harder. You won't be able to do any other work until we're finished and cleared. Lena's face went pale. 8 days where we can't make any progress on the other violations. That's right, Dominic confirmed. But it's non-negotiable. You can't do construction work in an active abatement zone. It's dangerous and illegal. Ryan did the mental math. 8 days for abatement. That left 22 days to complete all structural repairs, electrical work, plumbing updates, and pass final inspection. It was barely possible with a full crew working around the clock. With weekend warriors and reduced rates, it was a fantasy. We'll make it work, Ryan said, more to convince himself than anyone else. Dominic's expression was skeptical but respectful. I'll file the permits this afternoon. If they come through, and they should, we start Wednesday morning at 6 a.m. I'll need that 8,000 by Tuesday, end of business. You'll have it, Ryan promised, even though his bank account currently held significantly less and his loan application was still pending. After Dominic left, Ryan and Lena stood in the parking lot, the morning sun casting long shadows across the asphalt. We're not going to make it, are we? Lena said quietly. Even if everything goes perfectly, even if we get all the money, the timeline is impossible. Probably, Ryan admitted. But probably isn't definitely. You sound like a man trying to convince himself. I sound like a man who's committed to seeing this through. Ryan looked at the diner, at the red tag still fluttering on the door, at the building that had become both burden and purpose. Tomorrow I'll hear about the loan. If it comes through, we've got our money. If it doesn't, we figure out plan B. What's plan B? I don't know yet, but I'll think of something. Lena studied him for a long moment, and Ryan saw something shift in her expression. Vulnerability and trust tangled together in a way that made his chest tight. You know what scares me most? She said. Not losing the diner. I've been preparing for that for years. What scares me is that you actually believe we can win, that you're putting everything on the line because you have faith in something I stopped believing in a long time ago. What's that? That fighting matters. That trying counts for something even when you lose. Lena's voice cracked slightly. What if we do everything right and still fail? What if you sacrifice your savings and your time and your son's security, and in 30 days we're standing here watching Caleb Rowe demolish this building anyway? Ryan thought about his father, about all the houses built and families served, about the heart attack at 53 and the funeral where half the town showed up because his father had mattered to them. About the way his mother had said he was a good man, the best man, even though working himself to death hadn't saved him or anyone else in the end. Then we fail, Ryan said simply. We fail knowing we tried everything. We fail knowing we didn't give up. We fail knowing that for 30 days we fought for something that mattered. He met her eyes. And maybe that's enough. Maybe the fighting is the point, not the winning. Lena's eyes filled with tears. You really believe that? I have to, because the alternative is accepting that nothing we do matters unless we succeed. And that's no way to live. She nodded slowly, wiping her eyes. Okay. Then we fight. That afternoon, while Ryan was on a job site installing crown molding in a lawyer's home office, his phone rang. The bank. Mr. Holt? This is Karen Chen from First National. I'm calling about your loan application. Ryan's heart hammered. He stepped outside, away from the sound of power tools and conversation. Yes? I've reviewed your application and I'm afraid I have to deny it at this time. Your debt-to-income ratio is within acceptable parameters, but the loan purpose, listed as business investment in a condemned property, represents too high a risk for our lending standards. The words hit like a physical blow. Ryan leaned against his truck, the metal warm from the afternoon sun, and felt the careful architecture of his plan collapse. Is there any way to reconsider? He asked. Any additional documentation I could provide? I'm sorry, Mr. Holt. The decision is final. Karen's voice was professionally sympathetic. If your circumstances change, if the property is no longer condemned, for example, we'd be happy to review a new application. Ryan thanked her and hung up, staring at his phone like it was a bomb that had just detonated his life. No loan, no additional money, just his savings and Eddie's credit line, which combined wouldn't cover even half of what they needed. They were done. Actually, completely, mathematically done. Ryan's phone buzzed again. A text from Lena. How did the loan application go? He stared at the message, his thumb hovering over the keyboard. He should tell her the truth. Should explain that they'd run out of options, that Caleb had won, that she should take his offer before it expired. Instead, Ryan typed, Still waiting to hear. I'll call you tonight. It was a lie. A coward's lie. But Ryan needed time to think, needed to find some solution that didn't exist, needed to figure out how to tell this woman who'd started believing again that her faith had been misplaced. He worked through the afternoon on autopilot, measuring and cutting and installing trim with mechanical precision while his mind spun uselessly through impossible scenarios. At 4 o'clock, Marcus found him in the hallway, staring at a piece of molding like it contained the secrets of the universe. "You okay, man?" "The loan got denied," Ryan said flatly. "Shit. What are you gonna do?" "I don't know. Call Lena. Tell her it's over. Watch her give up again." Ryan set down the molding carefully. "I convinced her to keep fighting, Marcus. I told her we could make it work, and now I have to tell her I was wrong." Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then he pulled out his phone, scrolled through something, and turned the screen to show Ryan. It was a GoFundMe page. "Tommy's wife set it up last night," Marcus explained. "She heard about what you're trying to do, wrote up the story, about the diner, about you saving people from the collapse, about fighting against a developer trying to steal someone's life's work. She posted it on every local Facebook group, sent it to the newspaper, shared it everywhere." Ryan stared at the screen, at the description of a single father risking everything to help a stranger, at the photos of the collapsed diner, at the plea for help. The fundraising goal was $50,000. The current total was $12,318. $12,000, Ryan breathed. In less than 24 hours? "People want to help. They just needed to know the story." Marcus grinned. "And Tommy's wife is relentless when she decides something's important. She's got the local news coming to interview you tomorrow. Says it'll probably hit 15,000 by Wednesday." Ryan felt something crack open in his chest. Not hope exactly, but possibility. 12,000 plus his savings, plus Eddie's credit. It still wasn't enough, but it was closer. So much closer. "I didn't ask for this," Ryan said. "No, you didn't. But maybe that's why people want to give, because you're not asking for yourself. You're fighting for someone else." Marcus clapped him on the shoulder. "You still need to tell Lena about the loan, but maybe now you've got something else to tell her too." That evening, Ryan sat in his truck outside Lena's apartment building, gathering courage. He'd texted her, "Need to talk. Can I come by?" And she'd responded immediately with her address. Now he was here, watching lights flicker on in windows as people came home from work. Ordinary people living ordinary lives where buildings didn't collapse and banks didn't foreclose, and nobody had to choose between security and doing the right thing. Ryan climbed out of his truck and headed inside. Lena's apartment was on the 3rd floor, a modest one-bedroom with worn carpet and walls that had seen too many tenants. She opened the door wearing sweatpants and an old t-shirt, her hair loose around her shoulders, no makeup, looking younger and more vulnerable than she had in the diner. "Come in," she said. "Fair warning, the place is a disaster. I've been going through every financial document I own trying to find money that doesn't exist." The living room was indeed covered in papers, bank statements, tax returns, loan documents spread across the coffee table like evidence of accumulated failure. Lena cleared a space on the couch, and they sat, the weight of everything unsaid hanging between them. "The loan got denied," Ryan said without preamble. The bank considered the diner too high risk. He watched hope die in her eyes, watched her shoulders slump, watched the fight drain out of her for the second time in 3 days. "Then it's over," she whispered. "We tried, but it's over." "No, it's not." Ryan pulled out his phone and showed her the GoFundMe page. "Look." Lena stared at the screen, her expression cycling through confusion, disbelief, and something that looked like wonder. She read the description, scrolled through the comments, dozens of people pledging $5, $10, $50, writing messages of support and encouragement. "I don't understand," she said. "Who did this?" "Tommy's wife. One of my crew members. She heard the story and decided to help." Ryan refreshed the page. The total had increased to $12,800. It's not enough yet. But it's growing. And if the local news picks it up tomorrow like they're planning, it could get bigger. "People are giving us money," Lena said, her voice thick. "Strangers are giving us money to save my diner. They're giving money to fight Caleb Rowe. They're giving money because they believe some things are worth saving." Ryan paused. "They're giving money because the story matters to them." Lena set down the phone with shaking hands. "What if we still can't raise enough? What if we get close but not close enough? Then we use what we have and we make it stretch as far as possible. We prioritize the critical violations. We do as much as we can with the time and money we've got. And we walk into that bank with evidence of good faith effort, and we negotiate. Negotiate with what leverage? Ryan thought about the loan documents, about the cure clause, and the requirement for substantial compliance. He thought about his 15 years in construction, about every contract he'd signed and every dispute he'd navigated. With the law, he said, the bank has to follow its own procedures. The foreclosure process isn't automatic. They have to prove we didn't meet the cure requirements. If we can show we've made substantial progress on violations, if we can pay even a significant portion of what's owed, they're required to review our case. And if they still say no, then we fight harder. Ryan met her eyes. Lena, I need you to understand something. I'm all in now. My savings, my time, my reputation, it's all committed to this. I'm not walking away until we've exhausted every option, but I need to know you're all in too. That you're not going to give up the first time something goes wrong. Lena was quiet for a long moment, her fingers tracing the edge of a bank statement, her expression distant. My aunt used to tell me that the diner was more than a business, she said finally. She said it was a promise that there would always be a place where people could get a hot meal and a kind word, where nobody would be turned away because they couldn't afford much, where everyone was welcome. Lena looked up. I've been so focused on keeping the doors open that I forgot about the promise. I forgot that the point wasn't just survival, it was service. So what are you saying? I'm saying I'm all in, not because I think we'll definitely win, but because the fight itself honors what this place was supposed to be. She stood, moving to the window, looking out at the city lights. And I'm saying thank you for reminding me why it mattered in the first place. Ryan stood and moved to join her at the window. They stood side by side, two people bound by impossible odds and stubborn determination, watching the world continue its indifferent rotation. Wednesday morning, Dominic starts abatement work, Ryan said. We've got 8 days where we can't touch anything else. I'm going to use that time to line up contractors, order materials, plan every step of the construction sequence. When he's done, we hit the ground running. I'll handle permits and inspections. I'll document everything, keep records of every dollar spent, every hour worked. When we walk into that bank, we'll have proof of everything we've done. We've got 28 days, Ryan said. 28 days to do the impossible. Lena turned to face him, and in the dim light from the street, Ryan saw determination etched into every line of her face. Then let's stop talking about it and make it happen, she said. And for the first time since the ceiling had collapsed, Ryan felt something beyond desperate hope. He felt ready. Wednesday morning came with the sound of diesel engines and the metallic clang of equipment being unloaded. Ryan arrived at the diner at 5:45 to find Dominic's crew already setting up. 3 workers in hazmat suits carrying containment barriers, industrial air filters, and enough plastic sheeting to wrap a city block. You're early, Dominic called from the back of his van, hauling out a heavy-duty vacuum system. Couldn't sleep, Ryan admitted. Figured I'd make myself useful. You can help Marco set up the negative air pressure system and stay out of the building once we seal it. I don't need civilians contaminating the work zone. Ryan spent the next hour helping the crew establish containment protocols, plastic barriers sealing off the work area, air filtration systems creating negative pressure to prevent asbestos fibers from escaping, warning signs posted at every entrance. By 7 o'clock, the diner had been transformed into something that looked more like a quarantine zone than a restaurant. Lena arrived as the crew was suiting up for entry, carrying 2 thermoses of coffee and a box of donuts. Figured you could use breakfast, she said, distributing food to workers who accepted gratefully. How long before you're actually inside? Another hour of prep, Dominic said, accepting coffee. Then 8 to 10 days of careful, methodical work. You two should go home. Nothing to see here except people in spacesuits scraping paint. I need to be here, Lena said firmly. This is my building, my responsibility. Your building that you can't enter for over a week, Dominic pointed out. Miss Moore, I appreciate the dedication, but you standing in the parking lot watching us work doesn't make the asbestos disappear faster. Go handle permits, chase contractors, do something productive. Lena looked like she wanted to argue, but Ryan touched her arm gently. He's right. We've got a list of 40 things that need doing before this crew finishes. Let's go tackle them. They retreated to Rosie's Coffee, spreading paperwork across the same corner booth where they'd sat 5 days ago when everything had seemed impossible. It still seemed impossible, but now it was impossible with momentum. The GoFundMe had reached $18,000. The local news had run a story Tuesday evening, local contractor fights to save historic diner, and donations had surged overnight. Comments poured in from people who'd eaten at Lena's place over the years, who remembered the original Lena, who wanted to see the landmark saved. "This is surreal," Lena said, scrolling through messages on her phone. "There's a woman here who says she met her husband at the diner in 1987. She's donating $500. "People care about places that matter to them," Ryan said. He was making calls, working through his list of contractors, negotiating rates and availability. "Hey, Jorge, it's Ryan. I need electrical work done starting week after next. Yeah, the diner project. I know it's tight, but I can pay your weekend rate and feed you lunch every day. You in?" By noon, Ryan had secured commitments from an electrician, a plumber, and 2 additional laborers willing to work reduced weekend rates. Marcus had rallied Tommy and Derek. Both had cleared their Saturdays for the next month. The crew was coming together, but the money was still short. $18,000 in donations, Ryan's $14,000 remaining in savings after paying Dominic's deposit, Eddie's $20,000 in material credit. That gave them $52,000 total to work with. They needed at least $70,000 to cover everything: abatement, construction materials, labor, permits, and the loan payment. Still, $18,000 short. "We're getting closer," Lena said, trying to sound optimistic. "Closer doesn't pay the bank," Ryan replied. He immediately regretted the harsh tone. "Sorry, I'm just running numbers in my head and they're not adding up the way I need them to." "What if we prioritize? Focus on the critical violations first, the ones that absolutely have to be fixed for the red tag to be lifted. Save the cosmetic stuff for later." Ryan pulled out the county's violation list, studying it with fresh eyes. Lena was right. Not all violations were created equal. Structural issues, electrical hazards, fire suppression failures, those were critical. Cosmetic damage, minor code updates, aesthetic repairs, those could potentially wait. If we focus on critical violations only, we can maybe cut costs by $8,000, Ryan calculated. That gets us to $60,000 needed instead of $70,000. Still $10,000 short, but better. And the fundraiser is still growing. We might hit $25,000 by the time Dominic finishes. Might, maybe, possibly. Ryan rubbed his eyes, exhaustion settling into his bones. He'd been running on 4 hours of sleep for the past week, juggling his regular job with planning for the diner, trying to be present for Owen while his mind spun through construction sequences and budget calculations. His phone buzzed, a text from his mother. "Owen's school called. He got into a fight at recess. Can you pick him up?" Ryan's stomach dropped. Owen didn't fight. Owen was the kid who cried when other kids knocked down his block towers, who brought home injured caterpillars to nurse back to health, who apologized to furniture when he bumped into it. "I have to go," Ryan said, already standing. "Owen's in trouble at school." "Go. I'll keep working the permit applications." Ryan drove to Oak Elementary faster than he should have, his mind racing through possibilities. Was Owen hurt? Had another kid hurt him? What had caused his gentle son to throw a punch? The principal's office was exactly as Ryan remembered from his own childhood. Industrial carpet, inspirational posters, the faint smell of dry erase markers, and institutional anxiety. Owen sat in a chair outside the principal's door, his face tear-streaked, his knuckles red. "Hey, buddy," Ryan said gently, crouching in front of his son. "You okay?" Owen nodded, then shook his head, then burst into fresh tears. Ryan pulled him into a hug, feeling the small body shake with sobs against his chest. Principal Morrison emerged from her office, a kind-faced woman in her 50s who Ryan had met at back-to-school night. "Mr. Holt, thank you for coming. Owen's not hurt, but we need to discuss what happened." They moved into her office, Owen clinging to Ryan's hand. Principal Morrison explained, Owen had gotten into an altercation with another student named Tyler during recess. Tyler had said something that upset Owen. Owen had pushed Tyler. Tyler had pushed back. A teacher had separated them before it escalated further. "What did Tyler say?" Ryan asked. Owen's voice was barely a whisper. "He said you were going to lose all our money being stupid. He said his dad said you were an idiot for helping some waitress instead of taking care of me. Ryan's hands clenched into fists. Tyler's dad. He knew exactly who that was. Brian Matthews, a real estate agent who probably worked with Caleb Rowe, who probably knew exactly what Ryan was trying to do and wanted it to fail. Owen, can you wait outside for a minute? Ryan said gently. I need to talk to Principal Morrison alone. Owen left reluctantly, and Ryan turned to the principal with barely controlled anger. Tyler's father is involved in the business situation I'm dealing with. He has a vested interest in undermining what I'm doing, and apparently he's discussing it in front of his son, who's bringing it to school to bully mine. Principal Morrison's expression tightened. That's concerning. However, Owen still made the choice to respond with physical force. That's not acceptable regardless of provocation. I understand, and I'll talk to him about better ways to handle this, but I need you to understand that my son is defending his father's honor against a targeted attack. That matters. It does matter, and I'll be having a conversation with Tyler and his parents about appropriate topics of discussion around children. She paused. Mr. Holt, I don't want to overstep, but I saw the news story about the diner. What you're doing is admirable. Don't let people like Brian Matthews make you question that. Ryan thanked her and collected Owen, who was subdued and shamefaced as they walked to the truck. Am I in trouble? Owen asked quietly. Yes, Ryan said, but not the kind you think. They drove to a park instead of going home, sitting on a bench overlooking the playground where other kids were climbing and shouting and living their uncomplicated lives. Buddy, I need you to understand something, Ryan began. What Tyler said about me, about losing our money, that hurt you because you love me and you want to protect me, right? Owen nodded, wiping his nose on his sleeve. But pushing him didn't protect me. It just got you in trouble and made the situation worse. When someone says something mean about someone you love, the best thing you can do is know in your heart that they're wrong. You don't have to convince them. You just have to know the truth yourself. But what if they're right? Owen's voice cracked. What if we do lose all our money? Ryan pulled his son close, feeling the weight of every choice he'd made in the past week pressing down on him. Then we lose our money, he said simply, and we figure it out. We'll still have our house. We'll still have each other. We'll be okay. But Tyler's dad said you were being stupid. He said you should be taking care of me instead of helping a stranger. I'm taking care of you, Ryan said firmly. Taking care of you means making sure you have food and clothes and a safe place to live. But it also means teaching you what's important. And helping people who need help is important. Fighting for things that matter is important. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Owen was quiet for a moment, processing this with the serious concentration of a 6-year-old trying to understand adult complexity. Do you like the waitress lady? He asked finally. The question surprised Ryan. I barely know her, buddy. But do you want to know her? Ryan thought about Lena standing in the rain refusing to give up, about her careful documentation of every permit and violation, about the way she'd thanked him for not being sensible. Yeah, he admitted. I do. Then you should help her, Owen said with the simple logic of childhood, and Tyler's dad is wrong. They sat on the bench for another 20 minutes, watching the playground activity, and Ryan felt some of the tension ease from his shoulders. His son was okay, scared and confused about why the adult world was suddenly intruding on his school life, but okay. Can we get ice cream? Owen asked eventually. Didn't we just talk about money being tight? You said we'd be okay, and you always say after hard things we get ice cream. Ryan laughed despite everything. You're absolutely right. Ice cream it is. They got ice cream, 2 scoops each, chocolate and vanilla, sitting at a sticky outdoor table while the afternoon sun slanted through the trees. Owen chattered about normal kid things, the school incident apparently processed and filed away, and Ryan tried to be present even as his mind drifted back to the diner. That evening, after putting Owen to bed with extra reassurance that everything was fine and Tyler's dad didn't know what he was talking about, Ryan called Lena. How's Owen? She asked immediately. He's okay. Defended my honor against a bully whose father apparently thinks I'm an idiot. You're not an idiot? You're possibly insane, but not an idiot. There's a difference? Idiots don't know what they're risking. You know exactly what you're risking and you're doing it anyway. That's not stupidity. That's courage. Lena paused. Or insanity. I'm still deciding which. Ryan smiled despite his exhaustion. How did the permits go? Submitted applications for electrical, plumbing, and structural work. The county says 7 to 10 business days for approval. We don't have 10 business days. I know, so I called in a favor with the county clerk. She's expediting our applications. Says we should have approvals by Monday. How did you manage that? Her daughter worked at the diner through high school. I wrote her a college recommendation letter 5 years ago. She remembered. Lena's voice softened. Turns out when you spend 12 years being kind to people, some of them want to help you when you need it. They talked for another hour, going through the construction timeline, the material orders, the inspection schedule. It was practical conversation, logistics, and planning, but underneath it, Ryan felt something else developing, a partnership built on shared purpose and mutual respect. The fundraiser hit $22,000, Lena said as they were wrapping up. And I got a call from a woman who runs a restaurant association. She wants to feature our story in their newsletter, says it might bring in more donors. Every bit helps. Ryan, thank you for today, for dealing with the school thing, for being there for your son even when you're drowning in this project. It matters that you keep him as priority. He's always priority, Ryan said. This project doesn't mean anything if I lose him in the process. The next week passed in a blur of controlled chaos. Dominic's crew worked inside the sealed containment zone, invisible behind plastic sheeting and hazmat protocols. Ryan juggled his regular job with evening planning sessions, ordering materials, coordinating contractors. Lena handled permits and inspections, documenting everything with meticulous detail. The fundraiser climbed to $28,000, then $30,000. The Restaurant Association newsletter went out to 1,500 members. Donations ticked upward. Marcus and his crew started showing up at the diner after their regular shifts, prepping the exterior work they could do while abatement was ongoing, replacing rotted fascia boards, repairing the foundation drainage, clearing debris. They worked under portable lights as evening faded to night, fueled by pizza and determination. On day 6 of abatement, Ryan's phone rang at 11 p.m. Dominic. We've got a problem. Ryan's stomach dropped. What kind of problem? The asbestos contamination is worse than I thought. It's not just the ceiling tiles. There's asbestos-containing material in the ductwork insulation. I didn't catch it in the initial assessment because it was hidden behind the collapsed ceiling. How much worse? 2 additional days of work, maybe 3, and another $4,000 in costs. Ryan closed his eyes, doing math he was tired of doing. $4,000 more they didn't have. 2 or 3 more days they couldn't afford to lose. Can you front the cost? Ryan asked. I'll pay you when the fundraiser... Ryan, I'm already working at cost. I can't front another $4,000. Then I'll find it somewhere else. Just keep working. We can't afford delays. Ryan hung up and stared at the ceiling of his bedroom, listening to the house settle around him. Owen was asleep down the hall. His savings account was nearly empty. The fundraiser was growing, but not fast enough. The timeline was already impossible, and now it was 3 days more impossible. He picked up his phone and did something he'd sworn he wouldn't do. He called his mother. Ryan, it's 11 o'clock. Is everything okay? I need to borrow money, Mom. $4,000. I'll pay you back with interest. We've hit an unexpected cost and I don't have anywhere else to turn. His mother was quiet for a moment. The diner project. Yes. Ryan, I don't have $4,000 in cash. My savings is tied up in CDS and retirement accounts. If I withdrew early, the penalties would be, forget it. I'm sorry I asked. I'll figure something else out. Wait. His mother's voice sharpened. I can't give you cash, but I can take out a personal loan. My credit's better than yours. I can have the money by Friday. Mom, I can't ask you to... You're not asking. I'm offering. Your father would have done the same thing in a heartbeat, and he would have wanted me to help you when you're trying to do something that matters. She paused. But Ryan, I need you to promise me something. If this fails, if you lose everything trying to save this building, you won't let it destroy you. You'll accept it and move forward and keep being the father Owen needs. I promise, Ryan said, his throat tight. Then I'll have the money Friday. Now get some sleep. You sound exhausted. Friday arrived with Dominic's crew emerging from the containment zone, like astronauts returning from hostile territory. The abatement was complete. The building had been cleared. Testing confirmed 0 asbestos fibers in the air, lead paint properly contained and neutralized. "You're good to start construction," Dominic said, handing Ryan the clearance certificates. "Building's as clean as it's going to get. The rest is up to you." Ryan stood in the diner for the first time in 11 days, seeing it stripped down to studs and concrete. The damaged ceiling was gone entirely, exposing roof decking and joists. The walls were bare drywall, waiting for paint. The floor was scarred and stained, but structurally sound. It looked like a war zone. It looked like possibility. Lena stood beside him, her hand covering her mouth, tears streaming down her face. 11 days, she whispered. "We've used 11 days and all we've done is remove contamination. We still have to actually rebuild." "Then we rebuild," Ryan said. "Tomorrow, 6 a.m., my crew starts. We've got 19 days to make this happen." That Saturday, the real work began. Marcus and Tommy arrived at 5:30, beating the sunrise. Derek showed up at 6 with his younger brother. Free labor, he explained. The kid needed community service hours for school. Jorge, the electrician, rolled in at 6:30 with his van full of wire and conduit and the patient expression of a man who'd seen too many rushed jobs go wrong. Ryan had mapped out every hour of the next 19 days, a construction sequence so tight there was 0 margin for error. Day 1, structural reinforcement and roof repairs. Day 2 and 3, electrical rough-in. Day 4 and 5, plumbing. Day 6 through 10, drywall, insulation, HVAC. Day 11 through 15, finish work, painting, flooring. Day 16 through 18, final touches and punch list. Day 19, inspection and prayer. They worked with military precision, each crew member knowing exactly what needed to happen and when. Ryan moved between tasks, troubleshooting problems, adjusting plans on the fly, pushing everyone, including himself, past the point of exhaustion. Lena worked alongside them, learning to hang drywall and mud joints, paint walls, and install baseboards. She brought food, sandwiches, and coffee, and endless encouragement. She documented everything with photos and detailed notes, building the evidence file they'd need for the bank. The fundraiser hit $35,000. The Restaurant Association sent a check for $2,000. A local lumberyard, hearing the story, donated materials at cost. Small miracles accumulating into something that might be enough. On day 5, the electrical inspection failed. Jorge had run the new wiring to code, but the inspector found an issue with the main panel. It needed upgrading to handle the increased load. Another $2,000, another 2 days of work. Ryan wanted to scream, wanted to punch something, wanted to quit. Instead, he called Eddie and begged for more credit. Eddie, saint that he was, extended another $3,000 on top of everything else, and Jorge worked through the night to upgrade the panel. The second inspection passed. On day 8, the plumber discovered the main water line was corroded beyond repair. It needed replacing from the street connection to the building. City permit required. 3-day wait minimum for inspection. Lena pulled another favor, got the permit expedited to 2 days, and Ryan's crew dug the trench by hand to save contractor costs. They worked in shifts, 16-hour days, excavating frozen ground under portable lights. The water line passed inspection. On day 12, they ran out of drywall compound. The supplier Eddie used was back-ordered 3 days. Ryan drove 2 hours to another supplier, paid premium rates, hauled it back himself. They hung drywall until midnight, mudded joints until 2 a.m., sanded starting at 5 a.m. The crew was running on fumes and stubbornness, sustained by pizza and the knowledge that they were running out of time. On day 15, with 4 days left before the loan deadline, Caleb Rowe made his appearance. Ryan was on a ladder installing ceiling tiles when he heard the voice that had haunted his stress dreams. "Impressive. You've actually made progress. I'm almost disappointed. I was hoping to watch this collapse more spectacularly." Caleb stood in the doorway, immaculate as always, surveying the work with an expression of mild amusement. Ryan climbed down the ladder slowly, every muscle screaming from 2 weeks of physical labor. Marcus moved to stand beside him, and Ryan saw the rest of the crew subtly positioning themselves, forming a wall between Caleb and their work. "You need to leave," Ryan said quietly. "This is private property, and you're not welcome." "Actually, it's still bank property until the loan is satisfied. Which it won't be. Caleb stepped further inside, his expensive shoes leaving prints on the dusty floor. You've done good work here. Really. But it's not enough. You're still short on the loan payment. You're running out of time. And even if you somehow finish the construction, you still have to pass final inspection. The county inspector is very thorough, very particular. The implication hung in the air like smoke. Are you saying you've gotten to the inspector? Lena demanded, emerging from the kitchen. She'd been painting trim, her clothes splattered with white, her hair pulled back, looking fierce and exhausted. I'm saying the inspector takes his job seriously. He'll examine every detail, every code requirement, every possible violation. Caleb smiled. It would be tragic if he found something wrong, something that would require another round of repairs you don't have time for. Marcus stepped forward, his hands clenching into fists, but Ryan grabbed his arm. Don't. That's what he wants. Smart man, Caleb said. Violence only complicates things. But let me make this simple for you. I'm prepared to make one final offer. I'll pay off your loan directly, $42,000. You walk away with zero debt. Miss Moore can start over somewhere else. Everyone wins. Except you tear down the diner and build condos nobody can afford, Lena said. I build housing this community needs. You're clinging to nostalgia. Caleb pulled out his phone, tapped something, and held it out to show Lena. That's the offer letter. It expires at 5 p.m. today. After that, you're on your own. Ryan looked at Lena, saw the exhaustion and fear warring with determination in her eyes, saw her calculating whether 4 more days of fighting was worth the inevitable defeat Caleb was promising. We'll pass, Ryan said before Lena could speak. Ryan, Lena started. We'll pass, he repeated louder. We've got 4 days. We've got a crew that's proven we can work miracles. And we've got something you'll never understand, Ro. We've got people who believe this place matters. Caleb's smile turned cold. Belief doesn't pay bank loans. Money does. And you don't have enough. Then I guess we'll find out Monday whether we're right or you are, Ryan said. Now get the hell out of our building. For a moment, Caleb looked like he might argue. Then he pocketed his phone and headed for the door. See you Monday, Mr. Holt. I'll be at the foreclosure auction, ready to buy this place for pennies on the dollar. I hope your belief keeps you warm when you're explaining to your son why Daddy's broke. He left, and the silence that followed was heavy with doubt. Did we just make a terrible mistake? Lena asked quietly. Ryan looked around at the diner, the new drywall, the fresh paint, the electrical panels and plumbing, and all the hours of work represented in every surface. Maybe, he admitted. But we've come too far to quit now. Marcus clapped him on the shoulder. 4 days. We can do 4 days. 4 days, Ryan echoed. And the crew went back to work, racing against a clock that refused to slow down and a deadline that might destroy everything they'd built. The final 4 days blurred into a continuous loop of work, sleep, and desperation, measured in hours instead of days. Sunday morning arrived with Marcus showing up at 4 a.m., 2 hours early, carrying thermoses of coffee strong enough to wake the dead. Couldn't sleep anyway, he explained when Ryan opened the diner door, already inside despite the pre-dawn darkness. Figured I might as well be useful. They worked in silence for a while, Marcus cutting baseboards while Ryan installed the last of the ceiling tiles, both men moving with the exhausted precision of people who'd pushed past tired into some realm beyond it. You know this is insane, right? Marcus said eventually. You've mentioned that before. Just making sure you're still aware. Marcus measured a board, marked it, cut. Tommy's wife updated the fundraiser last night, $38,000. That plus whatever you've got left puts you at maybe $52,000 total. You're still $15,000 short of covering everything. Ryan had run these numbers so many times they'd become a kind of mantra of insufficiency. I know. So what's the plan? Show up at the bank tomorrow with a sob story and hope they feel generous? Show up with proof we've fixed every violation. Show up with evidence of good faith effort. Show up with the fundraiser money and whatever leverage the loan documents give us. Ryan climbed down the ladder, his shoulders screaming. And then we see if the law actually means something or if Caleb's already bought the decision. You really think there's a chance? Ryan was quiet for a moment, examining the question honestly. Did he think they'd win? The math said no. The timeline said no. Caleb's confidence said no. But something deeper, something that had kept him working through collapsed ceilings and denied loans and his son getting in fights at school, refused to accept defeat. "I think we've done everything humanly possible," Ryan said finally. "If that's not enough, at least we'll know we tried." The rest of the crew arrived by 6. Jorge finished the electrical work, running final connections and testing every circuit. The plumber, a gruff man named Pete, who'd worked for reduced rates as a favor to Eddie, completed the water heater installation and verified the pressure. Derek and his brother painted the last section of wall, their roller strokes steady despite 36 hours of near-continuous work. Lena moved through the space with her camera and clipboard, documenting everything. She photographed each completed repair, noted every permit clearance, built the evidence file that might be the difference between saving the diner and losing everything. At noon, the county building inspector arrived for the pre-final inspection, a courtesy review to identify any issues before the official final inspection Monday morning. His name was Gerald Hutchins, a man in his 60s with the expression of someone who'd seen every shortcut and code violation contractors thought they could hide. He moved through the diner with methodical slowness, testing outlets, examining joints, checking clearances with a measuring tape he pulled from his belt like a gunslinger drawing a weapon. Ryan followed at a respectful distance, his heart hammering with each inspection point. One failure, one missed detail, one code requirement they'd overlooked in their desperate rush. That's all it would take. Gerald checked the electrical panel, nodded, examined the plumbing connections, made a note, tested the structural reinforcements Ryan's crew had installed in the ceiling, measured twice. "You did this in 19 days?" Gerald asked, turning to face Ryan. 19 days with a crew working around the clock, yes, sir. That's either impressive or reckless. Gerald made another note on his clipboard. Probably both. "Did we pass?" Lena asked, her voice tight with anxiety. Gerald was quiet for a long moment, reviewing his notes. Ryan could see Caleb's words playing through his mind. The inspector is very thorough, very particular. Had Roe gotten to him? Had he been instructed to find violations that would delay certification, push them past the deadline? "You've got 3 items that need addressing before tomorrow's final," Gerald said finally, and Ryan felt his stomach drop. "The exit sign in the kitchen isn't properly illuminated. The bathroom door closer needs adjustment to meet ADA requirements. And you're missing one CO2 detector in the storage area." Ryan's mind raced. Those were minor issues, fixable in hours. But if Gerald wanted to be difficult, he could insist they required permits, inspections, delays they didn't have time for. "Can we fix those today?" Ryan asked carefully. "Before the final inspection tomorrow?" Gerald looked at him, and something flickered in the older man's expression, recognition or respect, or maybe just weariness with the games developers like Caleb played. "You can fix them any time before I come back at 9 a.m. tomorrow. But Mr. Holt, they need to be fixed properly. No shortcuts, no half measures. I'll be checking." He paused at the door. "I heard what you did when the ceiling collapsed. Heard you pulled people out, kept them safe. That matters. But safety has to be built into the structure, not just the response. You understand?" "Yes, sir, I understand." Gerald left, and Ryan immediately turned to his crew. "Tommy, run to Home Depot. We need an exit sign and a CO2 detector. Jorge, can you install them this afternoon? Derek, you're with me on the door closer." They scattered to their tasks, the clock ticking down, every minute precious. By 8 p.m. Sunday night, all 3 items were corrected. Ryan walked through the diner one final time, checking every detail, looking for anything they'd missed. The space was transformed. Clean walls, new ceiling, functioning electrical and plumbing, every code requirement met. It looked like a diner again. More than that, it looked like a place that could hold people safely, serve them well, be what Lena's aunt had intended. "It's beautiful," Lena said softly, standing in the center of the dining room. "I'd forgotten what this place looked like when it wasn't falling apart." Ryan saw her seeing it, not as it had been, but as it could be. Tables filled with customers, coffee brewing, the sound of conversation and laughter, and ordinary life happening in a space that had almost been demolished. "Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m., Gerald comes back for final inspection," Ryan said. "If we pass, we get the certificate of occupancy. The red tag comes off. We can legally operate again. And then we go to the bank at 11 with whatever money we have and pray they'll negotiate. That's the plan. Lena turned to face him, and Ryan saw tears streaming down her face. Not sadness, but something more complex. Relief and gratitude and exhaustion and fear all tangled together. Win or lose tomorrow, I need you to know something, she said. You changed my life, Ryan Holt. 3 weeks ago, I was ready to give up, ready to accept that some things can't be saved. You showed me I was wrong. You showed me that fighting matters even when the odds are impossible. Her voice broke. Thank you for everything. Ryan wanted to say something profound, something worthy of the moment, but exhaustion had stripped away his capacity for eloquence. So he just stepped forward and pulled her into a hug, feeling her shake against him, her tears soaking into his shirt. We're not done yet, he said quietly. Tomorrow we finish this. Marcus cleared his throat from the doorway. Hate to interrupt, but some of us have been here since 4 a.m. and would like to go home and sleep before tomorrow's finale. We good? Ryan released Lena, both of them wiping their eyes, trying to compose themselves. Yeah, we're good. Everybody go home, get some rest. Be back here at 8:30 tomorrow to make sure everything's perfect for Gerald. The crew filed out, exhausted but satisfied, leaving Ryan and Lena alone in the diner. You should go home too, Lena said. Owen needs his dad. Owen needs his dad to finish what he started. Ryan looked around one more time. But you're right. I should go. Big day tomorrow. He drove home through quiet streets, the city asleep or pretending to be, and found his mother's car in his driveway. She'd stayed late with Owen again, one of 100 kindnesses she'd extended over the past 3 weeks. Inside, Owen was asleep on the couch, his stuffed elephant clutched to his chest. Ryan's mother was reading in the armchair, waiting. How'd it go? She asked quietly. We're ready for inspection tomorrow. Then the bank. Then we find out if any of this mattered. It already mattered. His mother stood, gathering her things. You taught your son that his father fights for what's right. That's worth more than any building. Ryan carried Owen to bed, tucking him in with the practiced movements of 3 years of single parenthood. His son stirred, mumbling something about dinosaurs, then settled back into sleep. Ryan stood in the doorway for a long moment, watching Owen breathe, and felt the weight of every choice pressing down on him. If they lost tomorrow, if the bank foreclosed and Caleb won and all of this had been for nothing, he'd still have this. His son, safe and loved and learning what it meant to stand for something. Maybe that was enough. Monday morning came too fast and too slow simultaneously. Ryan arrived at the diner at 8:15 to find Lena already there, wearing a clean shirt and actual makeup for the first time in weeks, her nervousness evident in the way she kept adjusting the chairs, straightening tables that were already straight. It's going to be fine, Ryan said, though he wasn't sure he believed it. You don't know that. No, I don't. But worrying won't change the outcome. The crew trickled in. Marcus and Tommy, Jorge and Pete, Derek and his brother. They did a final walkthrough, checking every repair one last time, making sure nothing had come loose overnight, that every light worked and every faucet ran and every door closed properly. At 8:57, Gerald Hutchins' truck pulled into the parking lot. Ryan's hands were shaking. He shoved them in his pockets, trying to project confidence he didn't feel, and met Gerald at the door. Morning, Mr. Holt. Ready for final inspection? Yes, sir. Gerald spent 90 minutes examining everything. He tested the exit sign Ryan's crew had installed, checked the bathroom door closer, verified the CO2 detector placement. Then he went through the entire violation list from 3 weeks ago, confirming each item had been properly addressed. The electrical panel, the plumbing connections, the structural reinforcements, the fire suppression system, the HVAC installation, every single code requirement examined and tested and measured. Ryan stood near the kitchen, watching, barely breathing. Lena gripped his hand so tightly, his fingers went numb. The crew waited outside, trying to give Gerald space to work. Finally, at 10:37, Gerald set down his clipboard and turned to face them. You've got a few minor items on the punch list, cosmetic stuff, nothing that affects occupancy. But all critical violations have been cleared. All safety systems are functional and properly installed. All code requirements have been met. He pulled a document from his folder. This is your certificate of occupancy. Congratulations, Ms. Moore. Your building is officially safe to operate. Lena's legs buckled. Ryan caught her, holding her up as she sobbed with relief. The crew outside started cheering when they saw Gerald handing over the certificate. That's good work, people, Gerald said, especially on that timeline. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. He looked at Ryan. And Mr. Holt, whatever pressure you got from certain developers to fail this inspection, you should know I don't appreciate people trying to tell me how to do my job. I call it straight. Always have. Ryan shook Gerald's hand, unable to speak past the emotion clogging his throat. Gerald left, and the crew flooded back inside, celebrating, hugging, high-fiving. Marcus grabbed Ryan in a bear hug that lifted him off his feet. We did it. We actually did it. We passed inspection, Ryan corrected. We still have to deal with the bank. The celebration dimmed slightly. Right, the bank. The loan payment they still couldn't fully make. What time's your appointment? Marcus asked. 11 o'clock. Ryan checked his watch. 23 minutes from now. Lena had composed herself, the certificate of occupancy clutched in her hands like a holy relic. How much money do we actually have? Ryan had run the final numbers last night. 38,000 from the fundraiser, 6,000 left in my savings. The donated materials and discounted labor reduced our costs, but we still spent about 45,000 total on the construction. We've got 44,000 to walk in with. The loan payment is 42,000, Lena said. We can make the payment. We can actually make the payment. Barely, and that's before back taxes and liens. We're still short about 12,000 for everything. But we can cure the loan default. We can stop the foreclosure. Ryan wanted to share her optimism, but he'd read the loan documents too many times. Maybe. If the bank accepts the payment without requiring all associated fees and penalties to be paid simultaneously, if Caleb hasn't already convinced them to refuse partial compliance. Marcus squeezed Ryan's shoulder. Go fight. We'll be here when you get back. Win or lose, we'll be here. Ryan and Lena drove to First National Bank in silence, both lost in their own thoughts. The building was downtown, an imposing structure of glass and steel that represented everything their small diner wasn't: corporate, impersonal, focused on numbers instead of people. They parked and sat for a moment, staring at the entrance. I'm scared, Lena admitted. Me too. What if we get in there and they just say no? What if all of this, the work, the money, the fighting, what if none of it matters because Caleb's already won? Ryan thought about his conversation with Owen, about ice cream after hard things, about teaching his son that trying mattered even in failure. Then we walk out knowing we did everything we could, and we find another way to fight, but we don't give up. Not yet. They climbed out of the car and walked into the bank together. The loan officer was a woman named Patricia Morrison, mid-40s, professionally pleasant, with the careful neutrality of someone trained not to show empathy that might complicate business decisions. She led them to a conference room where papers were already spread across the table. The loan documents, the foreclosure notice, the violation lists. And Caleb rose, sitting in a chair like he owned the place, his smile sharp as broken glass. What is he doing here? Lena demanded. Mr. Rowe has expressed interest in acquiring this property through foreclosure auction, Patricia explained smoothly. As a potential bidder, he has the right to attend foreclosure proceedings. This isn't a foreclosure proceeding, Ryan said. This is a cure negotiation. That remains to be seen. Patricia sat, gesturing for Ryan and Lena to do the same. Let's review your situation, Ms. Moore. You are currently in default on a commercial property loan in the amount of $42,000. The cure period for this default expires today at 5 p.m. Additionally, you have outstanding back taxes of $8,000 and 3 liens totaling $6,000. The property has been red tagged for code violations which have been cleared, Ryan interrupted, sliding the certificate of occupancy across the table. As of this morning, all code violations have been remedied and the building has been certified safe for occupancy. Patricia examined the document, her expression flickering surprise. That's impressive. However, the financial obligations remain. Can you demonstrate ability to cure the loan default? Lena pulled out her phone, bringing up the GoFundMe page, and the bank statements showing the transferred funds. We have $44,000, enough to pay the full loan balance and still have funds remaining toward the taxes and liens. The loan agreement requires all associated obligations to be paid simultaneously for default cure to be recognized, Patricia said, and Ryan heard Caleb's influence in the words. Paying only the loan balance while leaving taxes and liens outstanding doesn't constitute full compliance. Show me where it says that, Ryan challenged. Show me in the actual loan documents where it requires simultaneous payment of non-loan obligations. Patricia pulled out the loan agreement, flipping through pages, and Ryan saw her hesitate. She couldn't find it because it wasn't there. Caleb had convinced her to interpret the requirements more strictly than the contract actually demanded. The bank's position, Patricia started. The bank's position has to follow the actual contract language, Ryan said firmly. I've read this document cover to cover. Section 12, paragraph 3, states that default cure requires payment of all outstanding loan amounts and evidence of good faith effort to address associated obligations. We have the loan payment. We have a payment plan for the taxes. Lena's already set up an arrangement with the county. The liens are negotiable and don't prevent the building from operating. Caleb leaned forward. Mrs. Morrison, the bank's risk exposure here is significant. The property was literally falling apart 3 weeks ago. These people cobbled together some repairs, but there's no guarantee of long-term stability or Miss Moore's ability to make future payments. The prudent course is to proceed with foreclosure. The prudent course is to follow the law and the contract, Ryan countered. We've met every requirement for cure. We have the payment. We have the certificate of occupancy. We have evidence of substantial good faith effort. The bank is legally obligated to accept cure. Patricia looked between them, clearly uncomfortable. I need to consult with my supervisor. This is outside my authority to decide unilaterally. She left the conference room, leaving Ryan, Lena, and Caleb in tense silence. You fought well, Caleb said conversationally. Better than I expected, but you're still going to lose. The bank wants this foreclosure. I've made it worth their while to want it. You've bribed them, Lena said. I've promised future business, perfectly legal, perfectly above board, and perfectly effective. Caleb stood, walking to the window, looking down at the street below. When this foreclosure goes through, and it will, I want you both to remember something. I offered you a fair price. I gave you multiple chances to walk away with dignity. You chose this outcome. We chose to fight, Ryan said. There's a difference. Fighting implies a chance of winning. You never had a chance. The door opened. Patricia returned with an older man, gray hair, expensive suit, the bearing of someone who'd spent decades making decisions that affected people's lives. I'm Michael Reeves, Senior Vice President, he said, taking Patricia's seat. I've reviewed your documentation and consulted with our legal department regarding the cure requirements. This was it. Ryan felt Lena's hand find his under the table, their fingers interlacing. The loan agreement is clear, Reeves continued. Default cure requires payment of all outstanding loan amounts. You've demonstrated ability to make that payment. The certificate of occupancy proves code violations have been addressed. Associated obligations such as taxes and liens, while concerning, are not contractually required for cure acceptance. He paused, and Ryan saw something shift in his expression. However, I have concerns about long-term viability. Miss Moore, can you demonstrate ability to make future loan payments? Lena straightened. The diner was profitable before the collapse. With the repairs completed and the building safe, I can reopen immediately. I have my former cook ready to return, a waitress willing to come back, suppliers lined up. I've done the projections. We can be cash flow positive within 2 months. Projections aren't guarantees, Caleb interjected. Neither are real estate developments, Reeves said coolly, turning to face Caleb. Mr. Rowe, I appreciate your interest, but this is between the bank and our borrower. He looked back at Lena. Miss Moore, I'm prepared to accept your cure payment and reinstate your loan. However, I'm also requiring modified terms. Your interest rate will increase by 1 point. You'll be required to maintain escrow for property taxes, and you'll provide quarterly financial statements for the next year to demonstrate ongoing viability. That's acceptable, Lena said immediately. Furthermore, the back taxes must be paid within 90 days, and you must demonstrate progress on lien resolution within the same period. Failure to meet these requirements will result in immediate default without additional cure period. Understood. We can do that. Reeves pulled out paperwork, beginning the modification process, and Ryan felt something like victory starting to bloom in his chest. Caleb stood abruptly. This is a mistake. You're accepting a high-risk borrower over a guaranteed sale. When this fails, and it will fail, the bank will be left with a worthless property and legal complications. That's our risk to manage, Mr. Rowe, Reeves said without looking up from his paperwork. Thank you for your interest. Caleb stared at them for a long moment, his expression cycling through anger, disbelief, and finally, cold acceptance. You haven't won, he said quietly. You've bought yourselves time, but time runs out for everyone. He left, and the conference room felt lighter without his presence. Ryan and Lena spent the next hour signing documents, transferring funds, executing the loan modification. When it was done, Patricia handed them the modification agreement with something that might have been respect. Good luck, Ms. Moore. I hope this works out for you. Outside the bank, standing on the sidewalk in the midday sun, Lena turned to Ryan with tears streaming down her face. We did it. We actually did it. We did it, Ryan confirmed. And then she was hugging him, laughing and crying simultaneously, and he was holding her like she was something precious he'd fought to protect. When they finally separated, both of them were crying, exhausted, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what they'd accomplished. I need to tell the crew, Ryan said, pulling out his phone. But when they got back to the diner, they found the crew had already heard. Apparently Gerald had stopped by to drop off some paperwork and mentioned seeing them at the bank. The parking lot was full of trucks. A hand-painted banner hung across the front of the building. Lena's place. Open soon. Marcus met them at the door with a huge grin. Did we win? We won, Ryan said, and the cheer that went up probably violated noise ordinances. The celebration that followed was chaotic and perfect. Someone had brought champagne, cheap stuff that tasted like victory anyway. Pizza appeared from somewhere. The crew toasted and laughed and recounted their favorite moments from the 3-week marathon of construction. Jorge told the story of the midnight waterline excavation. Tommy described the time Derek's brother accidentally painted himself into a corner and had to wait an hour for the paint to dry. Pete the plumber demonstrated his impression of Gerald's inspection face, which was frighteningly accurate. Lena moved through it all with wonder on her face. This woman who'd been ready to give up 3 weeks ago, now surrounded by people celebrating her victory. Around 3 o'clock, after the pizza was gone and the champagne bottles were empty, the crew began filtering away. They had families to get back to, lives that had been on hold while they fought this fight. They left with handshakes and hugs and promises to come back for the reopening dinner. Finally, only Ryan, Lena, and Marcus remained. I'm going to head out too, Marcus said. You two probably need to talk. Figure out what happens next. He hugged Ryan. Proud of you, man. This was insane, but you pulled it off. We pulled it off, Ryan corrected. Couldn't have done it without you. Yeah, well, next time you decide to save a building, maybe give me more than 3 weeks' notice. Marcus waved and headed for his truck, leaving Ryan and Lena alone in the diner for the first time since that terrible night 3 weeks ago. The space was quiet now, the celebration over, just the two of them standing in the dining room they'd fought so hard to save. I need to thank you properly, Lena said, for everything you risked, everything you gave up. I didn't give anything up. I invested in something that mattered. You know what I mean. Your savings, your time, your relationship with your son. I saw how hard it was, juggling all of this with being a father. Ryan thought about Owen, about the fight at school, and the ice cream conversations, and the way his son had said, then you should help her, with perfect 6-year-old clarity. Owen's fine. Better than fine. He learned something important these past 3 weeks, that his dad stands for something, that helping people matters even when it costs you. Ryan moved to the window, looking out at the parking lot where his truck sat next to Lena's Honda. And honestly, I needed this too. I've spent 2 years playing it safe, making sure nothing could go wrong, building a life that was secure but small. This reminded me that there's more to life than just getting by. Lena joined him at the window. So what happens now? Now you reopen the diner. You make it profitable like you promised the bank. You prove Caleb wrong. And you? I go back to my regular job. Help you here on weekends when you need it. Be a silent partner in the business I helped save. Ryan turned to face her. Unless you want something different. I want... Lena paused, choosing words carefully. I want to know if this was just about the building, or if maybe it was about something else too. Ryan's heart hammered. They'd been dancing around this for 3 weeks. The connection that had formed through shared purpose and exhaustion and the gradual realization that they worked well together. 3 weeks ago, you offered to sit with me all night, Ryan said quietly. You said if I wanted someone to sit with me, someone who knew what it was like when the night feels longer than it should, you'd make us both some decent coffee. I remember. I'd like to take you up on that offer, not because the ceiling's falling, just because I want to know you better. Because somewhere in all this chaos, I started caring about more than just saving your building. Lena smiled, and it transformed her face from exhausted to radiant. The roof's fixed now. Yeah, it is. So I guess that means we can finally have that coffee. They moved to the kitchen, the new functioning kitchen with its gleaming equipment and code-compliant electrical, and Lena made coffee the way she'd promised 3 weeks ago. Not the burnt stuff from the old machine. The real thing, rich and dark and perfect. They sat at the counter, drinking coffee, and talking about everything except the diner. About Lena's childhood, about Ryan's life as a single father, about dreams they'd set aside and hopes they'd stopped believing in. The conversation flowed easily, the way it does when two people discover they actually like each other beyond the crisis that brought them together. I should go, Ryan said eventually, though he didn't want to. I need to pick up Owen from my mom's. Spend some time with him after being absent so much lately. Bring him by tomorrow, Lena suggested. I'm planning to start cleaning, getting ready for reopening. He could help, and I'd like to meet the kid who defended your honor at school. He'd like that. Ryan stood, reluctant to leave, but knowing he needed to. Lena, thank you for letting me be part of this, for trusting me. Thank you for showing up, she said simply, for not being sensible. Ryan drove home through afternoon traffic, his body exhausted but his spirit lighter than it had been in years. He'd risked everything and won. He'd built something that mattered, and he'd found something he hadn't been looking for, the possibility of connection with someone who understood what it meant to fight for what you believed in. Owen was waiting at his grandmother's house, full of questions about how the diner project had gone. Ryan told him they'd won, they'd saved the building. Everything was okay. So Tyler's dad was wrong, Owen said with satisfaction. You weren't being stupid. Well, I was being a little stupid, Ryan admitted. But sometimes stupid and brave look a lot alike. That night, Ryan put Owen to bed with their usual routine. Story, water, stuffed elephant positioned just right. But before turning off the light, Owen asked one more question. Dad, are you happy? The question surprised Ryan. Yeah, buddy, I am. Why do you ask? Because you look different than before. Less worried. Owen yawned, already half asleep. I like it when you're happy. Ryan kissed his son's forehead, feeling emotion tight in his throat. I like it too. The diner reopened 2 weeks later on a Saturday morning in late April. Lena had worked around the clock to prepare, hiring back her old cook, training a new waitress, stocking the kitchen, setting up the systems that would make the business actually profitable this time. The grand reopening was planned for 9 a.m., but people started lining up at 7:30. The story of the diner's salvation had spread through the community, picked up by local news and social media, and everyone wanted to be part of the celebration. Ryan arrived early with Owen, who'd insisted on wearing his fancy shirt for the occasion. Marcus and the crew were already there, along with their families. Jorge brought his wife and kids. Tommy's wife had made a cake decorated like the diner. Even Gerald Hutchins showed up, wanting to see the finished product. At exactly 9 a.m., Lena unlocked the doors and let the crowd in. The diner filled immediately, every booth, every table, people standing in the corners waiting for seats. The coffee flowed. The grill sizzled. Lena moved through the space with joy on her face, greeting customers, taking orders, being exactly what she'd always been, the heart of a place that mattered. Ryan sat in the same booth where he'd sat 3 weeks ago on the worst night of his life. Owen sat across from him, coloring on the kids' menu Lena had made special. But this time, Ryan wasn't alone. Lena stopped by between orders, refilling his coffee, stealing moments to sit when the rush allowed. Around 11 a.m., the door opened and Caleb Rowe walked in. The diner went quiet. Every person there knew the story, knew what Caleb had tried to do. Marcus stood, ready to throw him out, but Ryan raised a hand, stopping him. Caleb walked to the counter, and Lena met him there with her order pad, her expression neutral but strong. "What can I get you?" she asked. "Coffee? Black?" Caleb looked around the packed diner at the families and the laughter and the community that had rallied to save this place. "You won. Congratulations." "We won," Lena corrected. "All of us. Everyone who believed this place was worth saving." Caleb nodded slowly. "I underestimated you, both of you. I thought you'd break when the pressure got real." "We almost did," Lena admitted. "Multiple times. But we had help. And we had something you'll never understand." "What's that?" "We had a reason beyond profit." Lena poured his coffee, set it in front of him. $3. Caleb left exact change on the counter and walked out, carrying his coffee, and nobody tried to stop him. He'd lost fair and square, and there was no point in rubbing it in. The diner returned to its celebration, the moment with Caleb already fading into the background noise of moving forward. Ryan watched Lena work, watched her smile at customers and refill coffee and be exactly who she'd always been except stronger, more sure of herself. Watched her stop to ruffle Owen's hair and compliment his coloring. Watched her catch his eye across the room and smile in a way that made his chest tight with possibility. This was what they'd built. Not just a diner, not just a business that would survive and maybe thrive, but a place where people mattered, where community meant something, where fighting for what's right actually counted. And somewhere in the building process, Ryan had rebuilt himself too. Had gone from a man playing it safe to someone willing to risk everything for what mattered. Had found partnership and purpose and maybe, eventually, something more. As the afternoon wore on and the crowd finally began to thin, Lena slid into the booth across from Ryan, exhausted and happy. "We did it," she said. "Yeah, we did." "So what's next?" Ryan looked at Owen, who was showing Lena's cook his coloring masterpiece, looked at the diner full of people who'd come because they cared, looked at the woman across from him who'd offered him coffee all those weeks ago and ended up offering him so much more. "Next we keep building," Ryan said. "The diner, the business, whatever this is between us. We keep building things that last." Lena reached across the table, taking his hand. "That sounds perfect." And in that moment, sitting in a booth in a diner they'd saved from collapse, Ryan Holt felt something he hadn't felt in years. He felt like he'd finally built something that would hold. The end.